Coming to you live from an abandoned subway tunnel somewhere underneath a famous European city, it's this week's Apocalypse. I'm your co-host, Kevin Lenihan. With me, as always, is John Ferris. How are you doing today, John?
Hello!
Oh, no!
It's happening already.
Oh, man.
I only got bit last night.
Oh, well.
I'm fine. I mean, what does anyone do these days? I got my car fixed. That's the most exciting thing that's happened in probably 3 months.
Well, that'll help you with getting away from things, at least.
Yeah, driving away from werewolves or hitting werewolves.
Oh.
Yeah, but...
yes, or driving into them, yes. That's maybe
that might
a more
come
preferable
up later.
thing.
But, so how are things with you?
Pretty good. Interesting story behind that. So, I was out last night on a wee supply run, looking for, the 3 Fs, food, fuel, and medicine. And middle of the night, running around, came across a bakery. Weirdly, there was some bread, and I wouldn't say it was fresh, but it wasn't moldy. Okay. So, packed that up, heading back down, and ran into one of them hurry beggars, I did manage to sort of fight him off with his stale baguette, but I'm just gonna admit it, I did get a little bit savaged, So,
it happens.
Yeah, so it was a bit more than savaged, I managed to, crawl around, find a sewer grate, get back underground, bits hanging off me. It was pretty rough, but
typical Friday night, really.
I will admit this, I once I got back into my my little hovel here, I just sort of tried to write my will on a back of a crisp packet and just sort of crawled into bed to die. And then, you know what? Passed out from the pain, and then I woke up, and to be honest, I feel amazing. I feel great. I feel friggin' fantastic.
Any bloodlust or...
Well, I've been very, 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 very hungry all day. I have noticed a little bit more hair on my palms than usual, but it's hard to tell. I've not been measuring it the way I used to, because I don't have a doctor breathing down my neck anymore. But I will admit I am a little bit worried, to the point where I'm like, maybe we might need to do some research into this and find out.
Yeah.
Do I have something to be worried about? Because there's no doctors can go to anymore, so the only medical expert I have is movies.
Well, luckily for you, I've watched a few movies about this.
Oh.
If what I think is happening to you, then I have the 3 movies for you.
What are those?
Well, first one is Ginger Snaps.
Ooh, okay.
It was made in 2000, so...
Okay, it's pretty recent, up-to-date information then.
Exactly.
Year 2000 onwards. Yep, that's.
And then we've got American Werewolf in London, which is made in the 80s. Werewolves are rife in the 80s, so there's going to be plenty in that. And then the last one's going to be how do I put this? It's a thing. It's Project Metalbeast. Probably heard of it.
Project Metalbeast. Do you mean, as it was known in the US, Project Metalbeast DNA Overload? Is that the film you're talking about?
Your DNA might be overloading as we speak.
It's really weird that you should mention those 3 films, because I've just watched all 3 of those films.
What are the chances?
I know. So, okay, let's get started. Okay, so Ginger Snaps. John, what did you think of Ginger Snaps?
Ginger Snaps is fairly competent. It's pretty good. It's trying to do a thing with the werewolf mythos, where it kind of links it with puberty and the main character. Not the main character. Sorry, but Ginger, the title character, gets bit literally when she has her first period. So, they're not trying to, hide it in any way.
It's unsubtle in its metaphor. Yes,
oh yeah,
that's definitely
big
true.
Time. But it's, kind of rewatching. I kind of remembered this one fondly, and rewatching it was kind of like, oh, okay, it's, it has its issues, but overall it's fairly competent in what it's doing and the story it's telling.
I have to say, upon rewatching it, I still really, really like this film. I think this film is, in the sort of pantheon of werewolf movies,
yes,
for me, I think it rates pretty highly for me. I think a lot of that is to do with the way they approach it. The concept is novel because, as you say, they use it as a metaphor for puberty, which is not novel. That is something that has been done.
Oh yes,
a lot. But it's so often that it's whenever they do it, it's usually male puberty.
Yeah,
and it's usually
vicious beast
like,
and all that hairy vicious beasts,
and sort of ignores the idea that when girls go through that, it's not actually that different.
Yeah, because girls don't go through puberty
in a lot of ways. Sorry,
because girls don't go through puberty.
Do they not?
No.
Oh right, okay. Sorry, John. I guess my my biology needs a bit of polishing up there. But no, they usually that kind of stuff usually doesn't get addressed in films, like horror films especially.
No, of course not.
I think they do handle that. Well, speaking as a white man in my 30s, I'm just going to speak for all women here about how well this film handles female adolescence.
It was written by a woman, so therefore, yeah.
That
completely justifies.
Directed by a man, though.
True.
It
did give me the impression when I watched it that it was written by a male, though. It's like, did the writer have a teenage daughter and he just needed to vent?
It's like she's a monster. Yeah. Well, okay, you're not the first person to think that.
Yeah, well, we should go through it to kind of give an outline of what's to be expected.
Indeed, yes.
In this very educational movie.
Yeah, so as you're saying, it is like teenage girls. Now, I think the whole part of the premise is that she has actually been late getting her period. And I don't mean late,
she's 16, which is
she's a few years late. Yeah. Like they're saying, I think they say at one point they say 3 years. Like they would have expected it about 3 years ago, and she hasn't. And then it suddenly happens. So I guess the whole thing is that the Canadian town that they live in, which movie is made and set in Canada. You see some French spark sprinkled around here and there on signs and posters and
the character Bridget says sorry a lot.
Oh yes. There's the odd word here and there where you can hear the Canadians coming in.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, they are high schoolers. They do a whole setup where we're the outcasts, blah 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 blah, and they do this whole thing where it seemed like it was maybe just fun for the people who did the special effects on the movie. Where they are obsessed with death and they have this photography project where they're photographing Bridget is photographing her sister Ginger in various states of being dead through different ways using special effects they've made themselves, and they're showing it to the class and everyone's ew.
For two high school girls, they are very good with special effects.
I would have been if I was their teacher, I would have been I wouldn't, because he gets
he's
upset
raging
with them.
He's all these are sick.
Yeah, whereas my question would have been, how'd you get those intestines to look so good? That's really well done.
And this is why you're not allowed to teach children.
Hey, shut up. Right. But actually, here's a good example. All the adults in this film, I feel, have this certain sort of... they have this certain sort of smiling, repressed thing going about them. Their mother especially is very much
that all kind of...
Yeah.
Comes to a head later in the film. The mother...
Yeah. In great fashion.
What I find kind of odd when they're showing, because they show this presentation of their of the various deaths of Ginger in the school, and they're not popular at all. They're very much the outcast, but everyone applauds for this suicide presentation thing that they do, and I was like, really? I kind of think they'd all be like, oh, you are weird.
Yeah, they didn't. Yeah, you expect that kind of thing, and then they're all applauding and you. But I think the reason they're doing that is, the whole thing with that scene is that there's the guy who is sort of the I was going to say love interest there, but there's no love at all. The lust interest, I guess. who's all like, "Can we see the wants of Ginger again?"
Yeah.
Like, yeah, all right, mate, whatever.
Yeah, that guy.
And it does a good job of informing us. All right, well, that's who this guy is. Then,
Yeah,
it gives you a good.
yeah.
It establishes his character almost immediately. Of he just wants to bang these girls, and that's his entire thing. So it's good for that. Because they are outcasts, but they're not like, they don't seem to be targeted outcasts. It's just that there's like, it seems like there's mainly just sort of one person who really, really doesn't like them. There's this one popular girl who really doesn't like them.
Well, Ginger is kind of not as outcast as her sister Bridget.
Yeah.
Mainly because the guys think she's hot and stuff like that. But they're definitely like, they keep to themselves. This is two sisters who spend every waking moment together, and they don't hang out with the other kids. Not at this point anyway. Things may change. So I do think there's still, like, a lot of it is them choosing to be outcast because they don't want. At one point, Ginger even says, if she gets her period and stuff, and she becomes someone standing by a tampon machine, like moaning about periods, then her sister has to kill her.
Yeah.
So like, they don't want to be
one of them.
Yeah, I don't want to be a normie. Kind of thing.
Do they use the word? I think they use the word normo. I think
normo.
The word, it's before the word normie descended on the internet, and every like person who thought they were hard done by started screaming it to themselves into the void.
But
so they're normos. So yeah, the whole thing is that so they aren't popular in school, and they do weird stuff, and they are obsessed with death to the point where just like, mate, the edgelord stuff, just wind it in a little bit, but it's fine. Like, to be honest, they're not unrealistic characters though. There are people who are definitely, I have known people like that. I've associated with people, and I've hung out with people like that. It's fine, it's cool. I don't, it doesn't bother me, but yeah, they're good, fairly realistic characters, which is nice. And yeah, so the whole thing is that, like,
technically the movie's kind of, it's really set in the 90s. Actually, I read something that the calendar that Bridget is kind of trying to track the lunar cycles and stuff too, and she kind of is doing the menstrual cycle for Ginger along with that. Yeah. The calendar is actually, it would have been for 1994 or 5. So
it's a really old one.
Yeah, so it kind of tells you that this movie is set in the mid 90s, and there was loads of edgelord type kids. As you say, we hung around with them. We might have been them.
I don't know. I don't think I was ever obsessed with death.
That's true. Yeah,
I believe I was once described by someone as being a happy-go-lucky scamp. So.
They're just obsessed with the macabre. Like, it's as if they've watched The Addams Family and just taken it to the next step.
Oh, people.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
No, I watch a lot of horror movies. Sort of how we keep ending up with subjects that are horror. But I understand that. I've seen that around a lot, and that's very real. So essentially, what happens is, they get bullied by this girl at school. They don't like her, and there's this whole thing going on about the beast, because of course there is.
Yeah.
Of course, there's a local rumor about a beast, and dogs are going missing.
Yeah. Well, they're not going missing. Their corpses are being left.
They're being shredded up and ripped apart. You're right, John.
And people have no peripheral vision whatsoever in this universe, because they don't notice it. Like, they're literally on a pitch playing, and the corpse, like, she pushes Bridget, the mean girl, pushes Bridget into the corpse, and you're like, how did no one notice this in a big field?
Yeah, because they're playing field hockey, and how did they not notice when they were setting up, and they've already been playing this field hockey game, that there was this split open corpse of a dog, not even like at the edge of the field.
No, right in the middle.
Yeah, it's right in the middle. And she gets pushed into it. Now, I thought maybe at that point, because they have a bit where they're whispering about the girl and one of her friends hears her and whispers to her, and then they sort of go off and then come back. And I thought maybe they like went and found this corpse somewhere and dragged it over here. But even that doesn't make any goddamn sense at all. So no, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But anyway, so she gets pushed into the corpse, blah, 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 after they've been, bullied essentially. And so they think, right, we'll go round to her house and we'll kidnap her dog and we'll leave a bunch of gore around the garden to make it seem like her dog has been got by whatever this is that's killing all the other dogs to get revenge on her.
Yeah.
And while they're out there, they're walking through a playground, and then we have the hit in the face with the metaphor moment of Ginger's like holds her hand up and it's got blood on it, and she's like, I just got the curse. Yeah. Meaning she just got her period. But she also uses the word curse, which is something they always refer to the Wolfman's curse, which is a nice wee touch. And then right after she says that,
almost the split second after the words leave her lips, she gets jumped by a big beastie.
Suddenly, from just out of frame, whack, she is knocked over and horribly savaged by this beast.
Yeah.
Fight. Oh my god.
Drags her into the woods. Bridget's running after.
Yeah.
Blah blah. You get the point.
Yeah, they have that moment that they often have in films like this, where one person is running around looking for somebody and shouting for them, and they can't find them, and then that person just comes running out of the dark, like, oh my god, like to give you like a wee jump scare. But it's like they don't really explain how she got away from the creature, but whatever. Who cares? Run off. They're getting chased. They run out into the road, being chased by the beast, and the local drug dealer, the local nice guy drug dealer.
Your friendly local drug dealer.
Yeah, you're very friendly, very actually genuinely nice guy, local drug dealer, happens to be driving by in his van at fairly high speeds. They run across the road. It runs out chasing them, and he smashes it to absolute bits with his van by accident, which is how we get him involved in the story. And
he likes to. I think this is a thing that's common in werewolf movies, that they always like to throw in the word lycanthrope because it makes it sound a bit clever and a bit, we know the terms.
Yeah, which he says almost immediately.
Yeah. And like he says it's done in a way. It's done in quite a good way though, because he's kind of trying to show off to Bridget of like, oh, it's just lycanthrope, and she goes, yeah, I know what that is. It's like,
yeah, it's like he's trying to be like, I'm gonna like impress you, and he's just like, yeah, I know that it means werewolf, mate. You're not impressing anybody here.
You idiot,
fucking dick. Yeah, but so, and then we have this sort of in other movies, I guess, in movies about like female adolescence, would be like she's having to deal with having her period and stuff, but then on top of that, she's having all these other symptoms. Yeah. Like, obviously she wakes up the next day and she's like, I'm not as fucked up as I was last night. Yeah. I feel weirdly fine.
The wounds are already starting to heal, which is common with werewolf attacks.
Yeah, yep. Every werewolf attack, you get like, for example, something like Dog Soldiers, where Sean Pertwee is split open and all his guts fall out, and then he picks them up and gets them stuffed back in, and then like 2 hours later, he's grand. Yeah. He's like, uh-oh, this is bad news. Why am I fine? But yeah, in this one, she's then grand the next day. She's fine, in fact. And then there's the whole thing where she's having her actual period, and it's really, really bad. Yeah. Which is not something you see explored in cinema very much.
Oh, no. Yeah.
And I think, again, speaking as a man in my 30s, I think they do it quite well, as far as I know. Or like they're honest about it, you know. And they have a sort of a thing. They have the father be the surrogate for sort of maybe men in the audience who don't appreciate this kind of thing and what it actually means.
Oh, the dad wants nothing to do with anything. Yeah. He's literally just there in body, and that is it.
Yeah, like, whenever they start talking about that stuff, he's like, we're eating. Yeah. And then the ma's just like, you shut up, basically. You leave her alone. He's like, yeah, fair enough. And they have that moment where, like, Bridget, her sister, says to her about something like, all this fuss for just cramps, and she just says to her, I think the phrase just, and the words just and cramps don't belong in the same sentence.
Yes.
Yeah. But then, of course, the whole thing is that, like, she's experiencing all these other things to go along with it because she is, in fact, becoming a monster.
Oh, yeah. The white hairs that come out of the wound it's very well done, and it's a bit disturbing.
It's horrible.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the effects in this movie, I think the effects in this movie are very, very good. They're very sort of scrappy in a way where it's like, we didn't have much of a budget, but we did really well with our small budget.
I think that's always a problem with werewolf movies, is like, you need your werewolf to look kind of cool and like to move kind of well. I don't like, much later on, I'm kind of jumping ahead, but much later on it kind of looks a bit janky and stuff, but again, it's not a massive budget, this film, and they do well enough.
When I always think to show the wolf in full, like, you can tell that, like, they had to make some concessions here.
And it moves kind of weird. The face is kind of awkward, and you can almost tell. You can almost see the man behind the mask, pulling the wee wires and doohickeys to make the face go. But again, like, the budget's constraints and things like that. You can't be too harsh on things for that. But I think that's why werewolf movies are generally kind of, I'd say they're quite hard to do on a special effects end of things.
Unless you don't care.
Yeah, well,
which we'll come to in another one of our movies soon enough. With people who maybe didn't care.
And like in this day and age where like your CG just CG these days looks great, or it can look great, but werewolf movies don't get a big enough budget to have a great looking CG werewolf, so they tend to look a bit kind of rubbish and rubbery. And
horror movies in general, even though they're very, very popular, tend not to be well funded.
Yeah, because you can make it on you can make it because they prove you can make it on a shoestring. Yeah, that's why they go, well, no, I'm not going to give him.
It's all George A. Romero's fault. It's like, he made like one of the most popular horror movies of all time, Night of the Living Dead. And like, what did he do? He got a bunch of extras, put talcum powder on them essentially, and the whole thing was filmed in black and white. Like, he made that film on an almost nothing budget. Yeah. And it became one of the most successful, well-known films of all time. Yeah. So like the profit margin, I guess, from a heartless corporate studio standpoint, the profit margin on that is when you have the big freaking dollar signs flashing. Or the Blair Witch Project is the perfect example of a pretty much zero budget film.
Oh yeah.
It's almost like we already had these cameras around,
and we had a tent.
And we had a tent. I had a tent and some friends, and we just went into the woods and we just did this.
Friends are the hardest things to get for that.
I know. Yes, they're the hardest things to buy. So yeah, there's a certain expectation, I think, from a studio standpoint, that a horror film shouldn't cost them a lot of money. It's not the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's like, and it's a genre that I think is unfairly, I think, a lot of the time sort of looked down upon. Yeah. Probably because there is a certain element of like horror movies where there's a whole lot of very, very, very bad ones that look cheap and suck.
Although you could say that for almost every genre.
Yeah, maybe, I guess. But there's something special about horror movies in that you can knock one together with your mates. Yeah. In a way, like,
and I think there's more examples of people doing that. The likes of Sam Raimi and the ones you've mentioned there. They all did it on a shoestring basically. So so we're never going to get a decent werewolf.
Yeah, and even when you get like the big funded ones, there's always like, there's so much corporate interference. Like, I almost watched it again, but I didn't. The remake of The Wolfman with Benicio del Toro in it. Like, I mean, I'm sure that was a high budget movie, but I was bored to tears with it. Yeah. I thought it was a very rubbish. It was just a bad remake.
It was really off-putting that they put Coke ads on the side of the werewolf as well.
Just emblazoned on the side like a Formula One car. Yeah. Aye, but
or it like stops and like opens a can of Coke and says,
Yeah.
Monstrous.
Coca-Cola. Oh God, I'm so sorry. Yeah, but the effects in Ginger Snaps, I think, for the most part, they use clever camera work and stuff like that to communicate to you. Sometimes, like the wolf isn't there, but they use sound.
Yeah.
And
sound
camera work
and close-ups and things like that help.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where you don't have to see like the full thing. It's usually like just like a puppet head like thrown up to the camera, but with the sounds and the right editing, it can.
Yeah, you can do a lot.
Yeah, you can do a hell of a lot.
Yeah. As I say, yeah, the effects as she's slowly transforming, which like that's the thing to note as well in this movie. She doesn't just suddenly become a wolf.
No.
She's just sort of. It's weirdly just sort of slowly happening to her. Like at one point, she grows a little tail.
Yeah,
stuff like that.
Kind of ridiculous.
It's really ludicrous, but I mean, I think it is played that way as well. We just like this is
because
little waggly tiny.
We should mention that in this werewolf tale, like most times with werewolf stories, you change every full moon. So it's usually 3 days. Yeah. You've got the day before the full moon and the day after. So there's 3 days. Mm-hmm. The person changes into a werewolf, goes out at night and kills loads of stuff, and then they revert back to human form. Ginger Snap seems to be that no, you transform into this bestial creature, and that's your existence from now on. There's no like, I haven't seen
coming back.
I haven't seen the sequels, but if you're going by this movie, it seems to be that no, you just change and that's it.
Yeah, there's what Ginger Snaps Back, I think is the second one, I think, and then there's like I think there's a sequel and a weird prequel that's set in like the late 1800s as well.
Okay,
with people who have exactly the same names, Ginger and Bridget, I think, which seems very very silly to me. But yeah, as far as this movie, it seems like she slowly turns into a wolf.
Yes,
and during that time, while she's still mostly human, the aforementioned creepy lusty guy. Eventually, she starts. Her whole character changes, and she starts hanging out with those dinguses.
Yeah,
and
being a lot more sexual as well. With these characters, and being very aggressively kind of antagonistic towards her sister, who's just looking out for her. Really.
Yeah, she's just really extremely worried about her sister because she's acting very, 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 very weird.
Yeah.
And dangerously, she thinks, which is correct, but it's maybe not dangerous for her.
Yeah.
It turns out maybe it's dangerous for everybody else. Which is one of my favorite things about this movie is that she does become like much more overtly sexual, and then eventually she eventually does have sex with that guy in a scene that, to be honest, when you're watching it, seems like a rape scene in a way.
Oh yeah.
In that he kind of seems to be asking her to stop, and then she forces him. Yeah. And as a result of that, he contracts werewolf VD, which is messed up. Especially
that's how they get you.
There's one particular scene where it's like, he has this little red stain on his trousers, and he's like, I think at first maybe he thinks his pen has burst in his pocket, and that's what he tells people, but then he starts pissing blood, really extremely pissing blood at the urinal, and and he just starts shouting about my pen burst as he's running down the hallway with like red all over his trousers. It's actually quite kind of disturbing.
Yeah.
So that guy sucks. So they have sort of a thing in this movie where, she contracts it through a claw mark, and then he contracts it from her. Yeah. Like an STD.
Again, playing up on the the sexual awakening thing. This is her first time having sex, and she just gave him, as you call it, werewolf VD.
Yeah, werewolf VD. Yeah. She gave him lycanthrope VD, which she catches off him.
And while she's off doing this, Bridget becomes kind of. She befriends the local friendly drug dealer because if you're ever stuck in a crisis, go see your local drug dealer.
Yeah, go see your drug dealer. It's always cool. It's kind of it's very similar to if you've seen it, the Faculty.
Oh yes,
which is, I think, is that Robert Rodriguez? I think did that movie as well.
I can't remember.
I'm pretty sure it's a Robert Rodriguez. I'm pretty sure it's a Robert Rodriguez movie. Which is another great. It is a great silly teen high school horror movie.
Oh yeah,
it is brilliant. But that does this. It does the same thing where it's like the local drug dealer is almost like this. I guess they're trying to paint them as scientists because in both of these cases, they're guys that make their own drugs.
Yeah.
So they have them be these like really intelligent sort of dropout characters. He's basically the same character. Is it I can't remember the name of the guy. It's the guy from 30 Days a Night. I know that plays him in The Faculty. The guy in this, he has his own friggin' hydroponics lab and all this stuff, and conveniently knows all about plants and therefore wolfsbane and derivatives there.
Also, does he live in that greenhouse?
He seems to live there.
Yeah.
We never see his house, but he seems to always be at this greenhouse, and it seems that it's just there in a field. I don't know how he affords it. They don't really get into.
They don't go into. Yeah, maybe the sequel goes into the drug dealer's backstory.
I bet it doesn't. But anyway, he's this super nice, cool drug dealer, and Bridget goes, but he comes to her because she drops her stuff whenever he hits the werewolf at the beginning when they're running away.
Yeah.
And he gets out of his van like, oh my god, what just happened? And finds she has dropped a bunch of her stuff. So he tracks her down to her school.
Yeah.
And approaches her. And then the whole thing is that like she has made a promise to her sister not to tell anyone. So she tells him that it's her that got attacked and that she is the one who is suffering from the lycanthropy. Yeah. And that introduces this sort of weird dynamic between them where he's trying to help her and she's speaking as if it's happening to her.
Yeah.
And like asking for help, and while he's doing all his research and whatever.
Research? His drug research?
His drug research and making drugs out of plants or whatever. And monkshood, yes, it's related to wolfsbane. That whole thing. And they're like, we can't get it because it's not springtime. And luckily, of course, it's available dried at the craft store, it turns out later.
Yeah, her ma just brings it in for the crack.
Yeah, her ma just happens to have it, come home with a whole bunch of it. Yeah, thanks, Mum. So there's that whole thing between them. Meanwhile, Ginger is still off, like, being sort of socially, what's the word? Delinquent, almost.
Yeah,
I guess.
She's starting to take drugs now. She's just kind of just being a bit of a dick.
A bit of a scallywag.
Yes.
Yeah, but then she's becoming like more and more violent. Like she has this whole thing where after she has sex with that guy in his car, and then she comes home and she's covered in blood. And I guess we as the audience are like, oh no, she's actually ripped him apart maybe. But she's all like, I didn't know what was wrong. I thought I wanted sex, but what I really want is just to tear things to pieces.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh no! But it turns out she's just shredded the fuck out of the neighbor's dog. Which
there's an awful lot of dog murder in this movie.
There's a lot of dead dogs.
Yeah. It's not nice.
Doggies. It's kind of... No, I don't like to see, it's a weird thing I have where I see animals in movies getting harmed and I'm raging. Like, I'll watch a freaking horror movie all day where people are getting torn to shreds. And I'm like, fuck them. The minute somebody like has a go at a dog, I'll be like, "Oh no!
Yeah,
you're the worst person. You're terrible."
Yeah, because they're big eyes and
like I think it's that like they don't have their own sort of like dogs aren't making decisions.
No,
dogs aren't deciding to be good or bad. You know.
Yeah, I agree. If you kick a dog, that is much worse than killing a human.
Yeah, it's really. You know what? Just kicking a dog.
Just kicking
it. Killing a person.
Yeah. The person did something wrong. You know they did.
Nice. Right, so she's becoming more sort of aggressive and murderous and to the point where her sister decides, she needs to get locked up. She like wedges her in the bathroom and she goes off like, I'm gonna go get the cure and we're gonna make it and we're gonna inject it with it and it's gonna be sweet, but they don't know if it's gonna work. And of course she's that actually a pretty good scene where she's trying to like smash her way out of the bathroom.
Oh yes, she's getting
she's not putting up with this
increasingly more and more agitated and kind of cutting herself up while she's bashing on the door.
Yeah, and they do the whole experimental thing that they do in all movies like this, where it's like, we don't know if this cure is going to work.
Did you write down the recipe? Do you know what they did? Oh, neither do I. It was like alcohol. It was like kind of you crunch up the monk's hood and put it in alcohol and then burn it over a spoon.
burn it over a spoon because that looks sciencey but also druggy.
Yeah, it's that good mix of.
Like, how did they do this in Trainspotting? Well, here we go. This is how you make something into drugs. And of course, then the whole thing is that I have to get back to my sister to inject her with this. And then she gets home and like she's fucking gone.
Yeah.
And then she gets accosted in the park by a VD man, who is, the man with the VD who is fully like he's got big scurry sharp teeth now, and he's looking real rough. And then he tries to get at her, and altercation.
And he seems to also get acne with it. He's got like a lot of face filth going on.
Oh yeah, they're doing the whole. I mean, yeah, they are again leaning into the puberty aspect of this is what we're saying, but also we're saying it because that's what everybody else says about werewolf stuff is puberty and blah blah blah. So yeah, he gets injected. It works on him and he is cured. And suddenly he's like, "Oh my god, what's happened? Oh, I have to go!" Like he suddenly woke up out of a daze. And then she's like, "Yeah, it works, but now I've got fuck all left." And then there's a whole thing like going to the school, and because that's where she is. She's gone to the school for some reason. I don't really know why.
Yeah, it's teenagers that love going to school.
Yeah, the fucking right they do.
It's never really explained why she goes there. It's just kind of she ends up at the school for reasons.
Yeah, for reasons, and counselor is a jerk. Ends up in a bad spot basically.
Yeah,
the counselor takes her because she calls somebody a cunt or something, I think.
I can't remember what we've also skipped over. They at this point they've already killed, albeit accidentally, the bully girl.
Oh, that's right. I completely forgot about her getting marked.
She slips on milk.
They don't kill her. It's her fault.
No, well, they are in some way complicit with it.
They're responsible in a way.
Yeah. It's Ginger being a big mental case, and then she manages to kind of squirm her way out of Ginger's clutches, tries to grab a knife, and then very stupidly slips on milk like an idiot and hits her head on the counter.
Spilt milk. Yeah.
Which that stuff always makes me kind of feel like more horrible than like monsters ripping you apart. Is like when I see like people hitting their heads off counters and stuff, because it's so real. It's like, ugh.
Yeah, it's like when you're someone like me who is clumsy and falls over a lot and drops things. It's a very real danger in my life that I might just fall over and get cleaned out by a kitchen cabinet. And that's me. I'm just.
Then I'll have to bury you in the shed.
Yep, which is exactly what they do with her.
Yes,
because mum and dad are coming home. But yeah, so she comes around to the house and she's raging because she's convinced that Ginger has killed her dog, and she says she saw her. Now we don't see that, but at this point in the movie, it's very believable that she did that because she has gone full on feral.
Oh yeah.
So maybe she did come and get her dog, and so she comes around and is threatening them, and they're like, "Calm down, what's going on?" And whoopsie doodle, and they bury her out the back in the shed. And it's after that point that Bridget freaks out and locks her in the bathroom.
Yeah,
like,
that's the impetus that she goes, "Oh, I really have to stop her now." And I mean, most of this movie actually follows. It more so follows Bridget than it does Ginger. Like you're very much kind of in Bridget's shoes, trying to like go, how do I deal with this, with my sister becoming a complete mental case and becoming a monster, and because you see kind of Ginger in various states of like progression towards being a werewolf, but you don't see like. It's not following her that closely, where you slowly see it transform.
She's the antagonist, she's like the villain almost. And Bridget is the protagonist. It is about like how Bridget's dealing with someone, her sister changing and becoming someone different. Even though they get to the point where Ginger says to her, "It's like we're not even related anymore."
Yes,
because she's so different. But yeah, so. Everything sort of spirals out of control at that point in the movie. Yeah. Everything gets properly messed up, and
she kills the counselor. She kills the janitor.
Yep. Oh, poor wee janitor, man! I like that janitor. He was so nice. Yeah. He was such a nice guy. And she just so she does all that, and then she runs off and I need to go get the drug dealer man too. Yeah, she goes to his party to kill him because he knows. I think is the idea, because he figures it out.
Yeah.
He totally just like, this, you're not feeling me anymore, Bridget. I know that this is for your sister.
Yeah.
Because I met her and she's nuts and she looks like she's turning into a fucking wolf. At some point in the movie, it's hard to... It is very conveniently Halloween when this all happens.
Yeah, I was going to say that, actually. It's like, if it wasn't Halloween, everyone would go, what is your deal? What are you doing?
So she shows up at the drug dealer's... The party, which is in the drug dealer's greenhouse, it turns out, where he apparently lives. And... yeah, so she shows up there and everyone's like, wow, great costume, Ginger. I'm like, yeah, okay.
And at this point, she's looking very animalistic. She's like, very, very good prosthetics to kind of make her look really kind of alien-like. And
yeah, her nose has changed shape. Her eyebrows are coming down almost so that it forms a snout.
Yes.
Her hair's like pretty much white at that point. She's like a wolf, like a grey wolf.
Yeah.
Basically, I think is the idea that she's turning into. And then, of course, gets all aggro with Mr. Drug Dealer, and we're all very worried about him. And then, of course, Bridget shows up like, no, stop! Blah, blah, blah. And they manage to sort of knock her out.
Yep.
At that point. And I think it bears mentioning that at that point, this is the point at which the mother becomes like a really interesting character.
Yeah.
Because
she talks about, like, because she finds the body.
Yeah, she finds the body of the girl who died by accident in the kitchen. And, like, she obviously isn't like, oh no, my kid's a werewolf. She's like, oh no, my kids who I've been sort of worried about, who are obsessed with death, might have taken this thing too far and actually murdered someone.
Yeah.
And, yeah, her whole thing is that, like, her maternal instincts kick in a crazy way. Where
she talks about burning down the house and, like, leaving the dad in there. And going to, like, they'll have a new life somewhere else. Like,
yeah, it's like she said, I'll create a gas leak in the morning and light a match, and then we'll start a new life.
Yeah,
it's like, oh my god, you're fucking nuts. Played by Mimi Rogers as well, who plays her, Tom Cruise's first wife.
Yeah,
weirdly.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I think yeah. I mean, I've seen her in a few things. She was a recurring character in the X-Files at one point.
Yeah.
As like Fox Mulder's like old love interest or something.
Also, the actresses who play Ginger and Bridget were in the X-Files. I think I'm near sure they were in season 5.
They were. And she shows up in horror things a lot.
Yeah.
I think because she was in Ginger Snaps, like she was in Supernatural.
Yes, that's right. The two of them were in Supernatural as well.
In which I think they make a werewolf joke in the first episode that she's in. They make a joke about werewolves.
Of course.
About how ridiculous the idea of werewolves is whenever, I think she asked whenever he's explaining that monsters are real. And he's like, what, even werewolves? And then that's ridiculous. Yeah. Like, ha ha ha, funny. So yeah, I think, and like the really good performances, I think, from them.
And they're very young girls as well. Like, you know, like a lot of the time you find child actors and teenage actors aren't as strong. I mean, they haven't learned their craft. They haven't put the years in, so to speak. But no, they do a really good job. And they're very well cast for it as well.
Yeah. And like I would say, like Mimi Rogers is a really good sort of. She has this thing where she just has this smile that she does that's just manic. Where she looks like she's about to explode, but she's got that sort of repressed 50s housewife thing veneer the entire time.
It's like a Stepford wife type thing, but it's starting to crack. And
then it fully falls away at the end when she's just like, I'll create a gas leak and blow up the house. And she's like, what about Dad?
Plus that explains where these girls get that kind of morbid fascination. Is like, you know, the mum probably does occasionally let these bouts of madness out, and they're probably feeding off that.
Yeah, maybe their mother's more like them than she would care to admit.
Yeah.
But she has spent a long time repressing and pushing it down deep. So yeah, she's all in to help them like Scarper, but of course she doesn't know what the real problem is, and Bridget is just more concerned with curing Ginger, and that sort of leads into a whole sort of scene at the end where I don't want to
Well,
necessarily
so
talk about the end of the
what-
film exactly, but
while they're going to get the monk's hood from their house, with it's Bridget, the drug dealer, and they have Ginger in the back of the van. Ginger fully transforms. So this is like, she's a proper werewolf now. She's
aye.
completely gone at this point. And yeah, when they get there, you've got your whole big finale scene, so to speak. It goes on quite a bit. Like, it's
Confrontation.
yeah. They have to sneak into the house. They're still very much trying to cure Ginger.
Yeah, I mean, Bridget's still in 100% sort of I need to save you kind of mode. And I think this film, all like sort of modern films tend to take like the old legends and stuff like that and be like, okay, well, what are we going to have that will be different in this? It seems like they discount the whole silver thing.
Yeah, it's not really brought up.
No.
Or no, sorry, it is. Friendly drug dealer gives her a silver ring.
Yeah, which does nothing.
Yeah, it does nothing. So they, but it could have just been, they use it as like a belly button ring. You probably they discount it in a sense, but they leave it kind of open that maybe you just need shot with it, or you need something more than that.
But they do have that thing. They do sort of discount it basically at the beginning, almost when the initial infecting werewolf, the werewolf that starts this with them, is just run over by a van.
Yeah.
I mean, like, there's no...
Oh, and do you remember how the drug dealer realizes that it's a werewolf? Do you know what the distinguishing part of this
He
this
said,
corpse?
I think he finds his circumcised penis, I believe, is how he explains it.
Yep,
It's like how he knows that it was a werewolf and was at some point a human because it's been circumcised.
Again, if you need to know anything, go to your local drug dealer. They will be more than happy to help.
Guys in the know. Yeah. Yeah, they're people who know people and know things. Aye. So, yeah, I mean, I think at that point, it's at the point where she becomes full-on wolf. I think where it's like what you were saying before about the special effects. That's the point where you're kind of like, okay, this was a really elaborate, difficult to do thing.
Yeah.
But that is the point where you do get the here's a big monster thing, which can wreck a lot of films. Now, I don't know if it doesn't wreck it. I don't think it didn't break my suspension of disbelief.
Oh, no.
With this movie. But it does look a bit rubbery and ropey at times.
Yeah.
It's the kind of thing that I can see that it's a special effect, and I am impressed by the special effect, but I'm impressed because it's like, oh wow, they're really making that face move in really articulate ways.
It's not that looks real. It's like, that's kind of cool.
Yeah,
I'd love to be
that's
the
kind
guy
of cool that they
operating those animatronics.
Yeah, that's a really good puppet. Is what I say in my head.
And it's like it's like times where like they kind of like ram it against something, and you're like going, that's really. Again, I don't want to be too harsh on it because they needed something, and it does. There's times where it looks very good, but there's the janky times can take you out of it a wee bit.
Yeah, but overall, I mean, I think this film is as in the sort of pantheon of the werewolf genre. I think this film's pretty high up for me as far as, I mean, again, the problem with a lot of horror movies is that horror movies can be bad and still be enjoyable. So there are dumb werewolf movies that I really, really like that are kind of crappy.
Oh, yeah.
But in some ways, or they're like ridiculously over the top. But I think I really like this film. I think this is a good film. I think it's well made. I think it's well written. I was looking up. I looked up the director, and I was kind of like, I would like to see more things that he's done. But he seems like he's mostly a TV guy.
Yeah,
he's done a bunch of John Fawcett is his name. He's done a bunch of he done Queer as Folk. He's done a bunch of episodes of Xena, Warrior Princess back in the day.
Oh, actually, I know a wee bit of trivia on that. Lucy Lawless, who plays Xena, is heard over the school PA, and two of the I think it's students that she's mentioning are Samuel and Theodore Raimi.
Really?
At one point in the film, yes.
Sam and Ted Raimi?
Yeah.
Nice. I did not notice that at
She's
all.
in an uncredited role in it.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so there you go.
I guess he must have known her from directing episodes of Xena, and
and she
everyone
she seems like a pretty cool person, so
Yeah.
I could see her totally going, yeah, I'll completely do this random wee announcement thing for
Yeah,
no
that's
reason.
very cool. Yeah, so I think like they do a lot of clever stuff with the camera work and stuff to mitigate the special effects.
Yeah.
In fact, in the sort of final sort of the scene where there is the scene when once she becomes a big wolf, they do a lot of clever stuff with sound design so that they'll maybe show you a shot of a doorway and then you can hear what's going on, and doing that you can be like, oh, I know where it is.
Yes.
I know where it is based on that. They don't need to show me. I can hear it crashing around in there. I can hear it like pawing on different surfaces, maybe going up the stairs, things like that. So they don't need to do that stuff. I think they handle that quite cleverly.
And just before we kind of jump off, because we're kind of reaching the end of Ginger Snaps, is the gore's pretty damn good, which is very important for a werewolf movie.
Yeah, when
you may call me an idiot, or I'm going down to the base level here, but you need pretty damn good gore for the werewolf thing.
In a monster movie, which this is a monster movie, you can live or die by how good your gore effects are.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think this film necessarily is the one would if they weren't great. I think this film would still be good.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's other films where maybe if the gore looked bad, they would have nothing. Whereas I think this film has a lot going for it, but it also has really good gore. It has like whenever you do see the dead dogs ripped apart, they look really real.
Yeah, it is disturbing.
When you
it's not nice to look at.
Yeah, people's injuries look really good. Like whenever a ginger has just been savaged by the werewolf, and you see like the score marks.
Yeah, it looks deep and it looks it looks like flesh is being torn and not just they've stuck something on her and went, that's a cut.
Yeah, and it is bleeding, and sometimes it did elicit a laugh from me, not because it was bad, but because it was unexpected and outrageous. Like the point where the guy who she has infected with VD is, he is bleeding out of his penis.
Yeah,
and you see him at the urinal taking a piss, and suddenly his piss turns to blood. Like I find that mildly disturbing.
Oh yeah, no, that's you do not want that.
And I laughed.
That is.
I laughed when it happened, but I laughed because it was horrific.
Yep.
I was like, "Oh my god, that's
it's a nervous laugh. It's to hide the pain inside."
Yeah, it muffles the fear. I think that you feel when you see something like that, and you're like, "Oh my god, I'm getting sympathy pains at the minute, and it's horrific." But now I'm laughing because I realized I just got sympathy pains from this guy's pissing blood in this film. And yeah, like whenever she's like the counselor, he's all messed up and tore up.
Yeah, that's very good actually.
Yeah, all that stuff's great. The blood looks very real. Sometimes that can be a bad thing. If blood is the wrong color in a movie, it can be a bit distracting.
Oh, we'll get there.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I recommend anybody who's interested in monster movies at all, I would recommend Ginger Snaps because it's a pretty smart film, and the puberty metaphor is common in werewolf things, but they don't generally do it with women, and movies don't generally explore female adolescence, especially horror movies don't explore female adolescence very
much.
Although
it's not in any way like it is very overt. It's not, or at least it doesn't feel that heavy-handed. It's not kind of rammed down your throat. It's kind of, apart from that scene, where she has her first period and the wolf almost immediately jumps on her. It's it's just kind of there, and it's always in the back of your head, and it's kind of just part of it. They don't keep like hitting you over the head with it, like going, "Don't tell you she's a teenager, she's on her period."
No, yeah, they don't do that, but like, yeah, it feels very like natural. The things that are happening, and the fact that her sister's like trying to help her, and she's like, you know what, you can't help me really. This is just happening to me,
which is true. We all went through it.
Indeed, we all went through female puberty. Yes. So yeah, I mean, would you recommend Ginger Snaps?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think it's one of those ones. I mean, it did. I didn't like it as much as you know, when I seen it, probably I think I seen it when it came out, but it was still enjoyable and still one of the, as you say, one of the very few better werewolf movies.
Yeah.
Werewolf movies, unfortunately, don't have a great track record.
Yeah, it's me too. I think it's up there. I think it's I was surprised at how much I still did enjoy it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because I saw it like back in, was it 2000 when this came out?
Yes. Yeah.
And it was I remember back then being surprised by it because like I've never seen a movie that explored these issues before when I was like 16 probably.
Yeah.
So at a point at which I hadn't really done anything, so it's not really that shocking. But yeah, I think that was the most, that it was novel then, and it still, to be honest, it still felt a bit novel to me today when I watched it, the issues that it deals with and stuff. So yeah, Ginger Snaps, definitely recommend. Okay, well, now for our second movie then. Project Metalbeast. Actually, it's I'm saying that wrong. It's Project Metalbeast because Metalbeast is one word for some reason.
Oh.
So this is a werewolf movie, John.
Is
what
it?
did you? Yes.
Is
it? Sometimes.
There's
Sometimes it's a werewolf movie.
There's something in it that kind of.
Yeah.
I
There's
suppose
that looks like a big dog.
I suppose there's no other words for it but werewolf. But
I feel like I should explain how this movie came up, or how I know of this movie. So a little while ago, I was just going through all the Friday the 13th movies, as you do. Just saying I need to watch all of these because I have a few holes here that, and like I wasn't necessarily a big slasher fan, but watching those films, blah blah blah, they're great. I think those films are fun and stupid. And after watching, I think maybe the 5th or 6th one, this film came up as a suggested. Other people who watched this also liked, and it is related to Friday the 13th in that it stars, in inverted commas, Kane Hodder. Man named Kane Hodder, who, if you've seen a Friday the 13th movie, there is a greater than 50% chance that he was the man in the Jason Voorhees mask.
A greater than 50%.
Yes. So he's not
I
always
like those
Jason. He hasn't always been Jason, but from a certain point on, from like I think the 4th one or the 5th one onwards, he was the guy who was Jason Voorhees. He was the man stomping around in the hockey mask with his machete, murdering teens and whatnot. So he is in this movie in the same way that he's in those movies, in that he is the man in the suit. Yeah. Whenever there is a werewolf, it's the guy from Friday the 13th who plays Jason, and you can kind of tell by the way he walks and the way he moves that it's the same guy. He's a very specific shape as well, so you can kind of see him.
Is that shape just big?
Shape sort of big and rectangular, big rectangular man who's taller than everybody and looks good, strong. So Project Metalbeast. So John, what did you think of Project Metalbeast?
I think the best part of that movie was the opening credits where I seen someone was called Lance Slaughter and I laughed.
Yes, I don't know if that's that man's real name or not. I thought about looking it up, but I decided that I didn't want to know.
Yeah, neither did I. I did the exact same thing where I just wrote down Lance Slaughter in big letters and just went, I should check that out. And then after the movie, I didn't want to be disappointed.
Yeah, so of all of our movies today, this is the one I made the most copious notes on, because it just seemed important. So the whole thing with the opening of this movie is that it's supposed to be 1974.
Yep.
Okay. Now this was made in 1994. I think this came out in like 94, 95.
94 it was.
Yeah. Yeah. So the beginning of the movie, it's supposed to be 1974, and it's two guys who are essentially in now. They're supposed to be in Hungary, I believe.
Yes, they're actually in Budapest, Hungary.
Yeah, because at one point the man mispronounces Budapest, which is fun. Which he says it now. He doesn't quite do it the way Keanu Reeves does it in Dracula, where he goes Budapest.
I kind of feel his pain though. I mispronounce everything, so I'm not going to get on him for that. Leave him alone.
But he really leans on the boo way too heavily. So Budapest, I think is how he says it. So it opens with a sort of It opens with a feeling of it's clouds. It's like broiling clouds and strings playing, and a harp going, and it feels like the start of like some kind of Disney fairy tale thing going on. And then all of a sudden the music turns into like this really poor facsimile of the music from Predator.
Maybe they initially planned to sell it to Disney, and it's
and
just missed it. They had another
Disney
werewolf
maybe,
thing in the.
For some reason, Disney didn't want it. I don't know. But yeah, so it turns into the Predator music for a wee second while they're sort of going through a forest. Yeah. And then they enter what I can only describe as what looks like a leftover set from a Frankenstein movie, maybe. They're like creeping around in an underground sort of dungeon with candles, and these guys are in full, like, to be honest, quite modern looking military gear.
Well, you know, they work for a secret, like some kind of secret government thing.
Yeah, government secret headquarters is, I believe, the name of where they work, which comes up on the screen in big letters at one point.
It's like those conspiracy theorists guys of like, oh, they've actually had this technology for years. They've had it from the 70s.
Yes, it's the aliens gave it to them.
Yeah.
It was the aliens came down, and when they helped them build the pyramids, they also gave them AR-15s. Aye, hold on. So they're in Budapest, whatever, and like, They literally, there's no like subtlety to it. They literally have it come up on the screen, the name of the mission and the people involved, and that they're there to get werewolf blood.
See everyone's motivation. I still don't understand where anyone comes from with, as far as like, okay, with these guys you can understand they've just been ordered to go get werewolf blood, but everyone, we'll get to it actually, because I'm kind of jumping slightly
from Spin City. The mayor from Spin City told them to go get werewolf blood.
He was also in. He was in Rocky Horror Picture Show.
He was indeed. He also weirdly he was also in an episode of Supernatural where he played like a magician guy.
Oh yes, that's
who
right.
couldn't die.
I've seen that one.
He kept doing tricks where he tried to kill himself, and then every time he did it, he miraculously survived and was surprised every time, and everybody thought he was great. So he's that guy. Bostwick, I think Barry Bostwick. I think
yes,
is his name.
That's his name. Yeah.
Yeah, so I actually really like him as an actor.
He's quite good. He's got a certain kind of presence about him that he seems very likable.
He seems very likable, even though in this movie he's playing a character who's extremely unlikable. They're trying to have him be very unlikable anyway.
Yes, yeah.
So the main character, Butler, is Butler. Big Butler is like, I guess their secret. That's
not his profession, by the way. I think we should clear that up.
He'd be a terrible butler. He's very brash and rude.
He's got very flat hair though, so
he does. He could
balance the trays on his head.
He has that sort of I'm in the military haircut that makes him kind of look a wee bit like Guile from Street Fighter with his friggin' brush hair. Yeah, the whole thing with this start of this movie is that like they're there to get werewolf blood or something in this place that I guess they know a werewolf has been hanging out for hundreds of years. And he has his special. Now silver is a thing in this movie. They make that clear
very much so, yes.
That they're loading their bullets with silver. They're loading their guns with silver bullets, and it's a silver bullet gun. And they go here. They're in the dungeon that's clearly just like a set of a Frankenstein movie, and there's two of them, and one guy whose name we don't bother learning because he lasts about 15 seconds. Gets jumped by the werewolf, and Butler, our hero, Butler, stands in the doorway taking photos while this guy gets horribly savaged.
Oh no! He stands in the doorway, he has no reaction for a good couple of a good minute or so. He's just like going, "All right, fuck, there's that werewolf there now."
Yeah, who is at first when I saw the werewolf, I thought it was some kind of ape creature. Yeah, because it was up in the rafters and sort of swinging about, and then jumps down in a way that if you know it's Kane Hodder, you recognize the pose when he's jumping down with his knees slightly bent and his arms straight out in front of him as he falls directly straight downwards. And like savages this guy, so the guy stands and stares at his I guess we don't get established that they're friends or anything. He doesn't really seem to give a shit about this guy.
No.
And just takes pictures with his big flashbulb camera.
Oh, they are very proud of those pictures. They show them every chance they get.
They keep it. It's almost perverse.
It might actually. It's something I didn't pick up on. It was actually my wife, because I forced her to watch this with me. We're not getting divorced, so. Yeah.
See, that's why I deliberately didn't make anybody watch Project Metalbeast with me, because the only person I made watch this movie was you, and we did it in different rooms. So
I should state, I'm joking, by the way, that yes. So she noticed that Kodak is kind of featured. I think the camera must have been Kodak, and it shows up somewhere else. I wasn't going to rewind and rewatch it to find out, so I'm going to take her at her word with this, and so maybe there was something going on. Maybe they got some money from Kodak to make this.
Maybe. Well, if they did, then Kodak wasted their money, because I did not notice that even a little bit. So,
but look how crisp those pictures of the teddy bear on top of the man with strawberry jam on it.
Look how really obvious it is that this is not a werewolf in this picture. Yeah, so this guy gets savaged. I guess the whole thing is like, then he like stands really awkwardly in the doorway with his feet slightly apart and his shoulders sort of out, like he's never held a gun before, and shoots at the werewolf a few times and it falls over. And then he does this, basically extracts the blood. Now they don't like take the body of the werewolf, do they? They just like
they don't take the body at all.
No. He takes a whole load of blood out of this werewolf and buggers off back to.
I think it should be mentioned as well that
Mm-hmm.
he's got this weird contraption for taking the blood out. Like, what is wrong with a syringe? What's like, it's doing the same thing, and you don't have to sit through again like 2 minutes of watching this guy's like wee tube machine slowly suck the blood out.
John, you know what it is. You look at this movie and you think about movies with no budgets. It's probably a thing that they had, a prop that they had from another film that was in there. I mean, that happens all the time. They did it in Star Wars, you know. They probably did it in this. It's just, this looks sciencey and like it might extract stuff. Let's give it to this guy and jam it in this wolf. So they get through all that. He heads back alone, of course, because his mate got savaged, and I think he puts a bullet in him before he leaves just to make sure the guy's dead. They go back to secret science headquarters, where
super secret.
Yes, super secret science headquarters for the government. They take themselves back there and do some science.
Yep.
And they are very rude to the science lady. There's a doctor and there's a scientist, a generic. You know what? I'm not going to call them doctors because there's a problem later with calling them doctors.
Yeah, I think they're very much scientists, which might explain their lack of medical expertise later.
But doesn't make a lot of sense with what they're doing and what they're researching, because with what they're researching, they should have medical doctorates and be experienced doctors. But anyway,
or there should be a medical doctor present who's all like, no, you can't do that.
Okay, so then they badger this scientist anyway, who is like I mean, they're really mean to her in a way that doesn't make any sense, because she's trying to help them, but she keeps asking difficult questions like, where did you get this blood and where did it come from, and they're like, is it diseased? And like, there's this weird thing where it's a problem in logic. Which is silly for this movie to say that.
But you're already just you defeated here.
I mean, when someone's doing a blood test, you don't go in and just do a blood test. You have to be looking for specific things. You have to be testing for X, Y, or Z.
For lycanthropy.
And like, they're just like, did you find evidence of disease? And she's just like, no. And she gets all antsy with him, like, is this human blood? Blah, blah, blah. And then Mr. Frickin' Butler, I guess, being really
it's not human blood, but there's an extra chromosome.
That's true. She gets all like, oh, what is this? And in fact, that's a problem, because she shows them the old DNA strip thing with the little chromosome markers on it. And like, I was just like, wait, this is 1974. It just said they didn't have DNA testing in the 70s at all. In fact, it wasn't even invented until like the late 80s. Yeah, and even then it wasn't even that advanced, but this is so stupid to criticize.
You believe that, do you? You believe that?
I believe the deep state, yeah. I believe what the deep state tells me to believe.
You're one of those, are you? You just believe anything you're told, won't you?
I'm complicit in the lie. You're part of
it.
I I might, you know what? If they let me be part of, if they want to pay me to be part of the lie, then it's a living.
I'll completely keep that secret.
I will take their goddamn money and be part of the lie. I don't know. I think it's I think they pay you in like Illuminati bucks. So, but weirdly enough, the secret is that they're good everywhere, even in space. So, they're badgering this poor woman, and giving her shit and screaming at her, and then your man Butler has the friggin' cheek to get annoyed about how much blood she's used, because he walks over to the fridge he walks over to the Coke fridge, basically, where they're keeping the blood, and he's like, "Is this all that's left?" And she's like, "You asked me to do all these tests, mate," and he gets really angry and screaming at her. And then
he needs that blood.
I know he needs it. I guess he took the big risk to go get it, I suppose, by not really doing very much.
And it doesn't really explain obviously their plan is to make some kind of werewolf army.
Yeah, I think that's what their plan is. They don't really specify. They're too busy. They definitely want to make a weapon, they say. And I guess if you've got werewolf blood, the weapon is trained werewolves, I suppose.
Yeah.
So they have this whole thing where they're angry at her, and then Spin City gets mad at Butler for being too aggressive or something with the scientists, because he's like, stop mucking around, and like they don't agree about what happens with the blood. And then then we are treated to an extended long scene in which Butler sneaks into the lab in order to, and this is something that comes up a lot in this film. This was my main problem with the film, is there are a lot of scenes that start with, here's a hallway, and we see the far end of the hallway and the door opens, and people walk through the door at a normal pace. There is no music, there is no sound, we can just hear their footsteps, and they slowly, at a normal pace, walk along the corridor. And this sort of formula comes up over and over again. Someone coming through a door, walking down a hallway, taking a long time walking down the hallway, going through another door. Then we're in the room they're walking down. We see them walk at a normal pace across that room, then maybe through another door into another room, sit down at a desk, ruffle around in the drawers for a while, and then someone else comes in and they have a conversation with them. Whereas anyone who's ever like watched a movie knows, no, you start with the person already sitting at the desk and then have the other person come in and talk to them. Yep, but they don't do that. And
it's
there's no music
level of just what is this like superfluous nonsense leading up?
Birdemic sort of lengthy sort of let's talk about solar power for 25 minutes.
I'm talking about like it in that movie. Not to get sidetracked here, but in that movie they literally show you him parking his car after he drives for like
pulling the handbrake, minutes, getting out, closing the door, walking all the way across the car park to the place where he's going to. Yeah, it's that problem.
Which is kind of indicative with these kind of really low budget, like kind of. They seem like they're not made by very competent people. That's maybe a bit mean, but they're so bad at like kind of knowing when to edit and like kind of go right. Yeah, I don't need to show how he got to the desk. No one's going to be like looking that backstory here.
Yeah, but I think at some point they're probably, whenever they're in production, they're like, this thing has to be at least 90 minutes, and this script is 30 minutes. So let's just film a bunch of superfluous stuff that on any other set would be B-roll, but it's the A-roll.
Oh yeah.
So he sneaks in. He takes it upon himself to sneak into the lab after a long time of watching him do this. Eventually gets to the point where he injects himself with the remaining werewolf blood to make a point.
Brilliant idea.
I think because he just wants them to do something with the blood. So he decides he's going to inject himself with it.
I think like I at this point in the movie I could kind of explain away this crap because they don't really understand the world. So he maybe thinks that he will be in complete control or something. I don't know. It's still a very silly thing to do.
He thinks of himself as somehow better, and therefore I won't be like the crazy werewolf people. But that isn't that how it always ends up.
Oh, yes.
In films like this. So, and then they have, like, so he sort of starts turning into a werewolf a bit. sort of like Ginger Snaps, but much less competently handled, where he has like one bad hand that goes clawed. That seems to be it at the beginning. He has one bad hand, and then they have an unnecessary rape at that point.
Yeah.
Which is just, I mean, and I, it's a horrible phrase, unnecessary, like there's ever a fucking necessary rape. But it does nothing there's no reason for it. It is not required by the story.
Yes, yeah, it's not to show anything in particular, or like there's no takeaway from this. It's it doesn't show you anything, thankfully.
No.
It is very much like kind of a cutaway scream kind of.
Yeah, and Aftermath then though is kind of like I was watching it going, I don't want to see this.
Yeah,
this is horrible. So he I don't want to describe this, but he accosts her in the library anyway and takes her behind the books, and you hear her scream, and then it cuts to her stumbling out of there sometime later, just covered in blood and crying, and you're like, why did you feel the need to do this?
Yeah.
Are you trying to be edgy or something? Because that's not edgy or interesting. It's just unpleasant. It just feels valueless, and I don't know why they put it in.
There's also, but before that, after he's taking the blood and he's kind of changing, he's getting all sweaty and he goes into this bathroom, and I kind of wondered if they had like a first take that didn't work. I can't imagine it's because of the sound not being good, because the sound in this film is terrible.
You can't understand. Yeah, it's like they've got. It almost feels like they've got a noise gate on it, but they set they set the noise gate way too high, so at the end of people's words, it will cut off. At the start and the end of people speaking, it will just sort of cut off, and you just sort of have to guess what the sentence was going to be.
I mean, I watched it with subtitles just so I could. That was also handy because it told me what the music was meant to be evoking, because otherwise I wouldn't have known. Plus, the music's played at such a low level. There was times it was coming up that like ominous music plays, and you're going, "What? There's no music.
It isn't happening." Yeah, no. I watched the whole film on my computer on headphones. Because I was like, I need to really experience the Metalbeast, and I had headphones, and you know what? Not to brag, but they're pretty good goddamn headphones. They're goddamn Sennheisers, and they work really well. And I could barely understand. I had turned right up. I could barely understand what these people were saying at the time.
Placement there. Yeah, we're gonna get some of that sweet Sennheiser money. Yeah,
and it's a completely silent movie most of the time because there's so little actual background, like you were saying, that ominous music. Yeah. There's so little actual background music. Now, I can respect a horror film when it doesn't need to rely on background music, and sometimes in some films you're watching it and you're like, you don't need to be playing scary music here. It's actually quite distracting.
Yeah, sometimes it works a lot better.
Yeah, something like the original Japanese The Grudge has no music in it at all, and it's terrifying. And they do that. I think they do a real good, because that film's sort of a fly on the wall, almost feels like.
Yeah.
It's not a cinema verite found footage movie, but it has a similar feel to that. You feel like you're just watching cameras that have been left sitting there during The Grudge, and so music would be obtrusive and would interfere with that. But in this,
so do you think they were going for that in this movie?
I don't think that's what they were going for. I think it's that they had 15 seconds of music and they wanted to intersperse it throughout the film and really make the most of what they had.
Yeah. Well, so as I was saying, so he's in this bathroom and there's a mirror up on the wall that's like smashed, but there's no explanation. All I could think of was this like a first attempt at doing this scene, and he just got like real into it and like punched the mirror or something, but they couldn't use it. But
John, I think maybe you've hit the nail on the head there. All I can imagine is that maybe they shot a scene where they had him get angry and break the mirror, and maybe it wasn't a great take, and they were like, go again, and maybe the actor was like, okay, have we got another mirror here for another shot? And maybe they were like, no, we don't. Let's just have you stare into the mirror.
Maybe that's actually why he has that like silly prosthetic hand. It's actually like under it. He's actually all bandaged up.
He's shredded his hand up, punching a mirror like friggin' Martin Sheen in Apocalypse Now.
Yeah, he's like, I thought that was going to be that sugar glass.
You're like, nope, we just used the mirror that was already in this bathroom and we don't have a replacement, so just stir into it really intensely.
But yes, sorry to sidetrack, but yes, that was slightly before the entirely
That's
ridiculous.
before the ridiculous, out of nowhere, pointless rape scene.
Yes.
Yeah. So they get through that crap anyway, and then like they didn't even need it because it's like the next thing that happens is killing spree. It would have been fine if he just went on a killing spree and murdered all these scientists.
Oh yeah.
But then he does that, and it seems like the way they handle werewolf science in this movie,
Werewolf science,
if I may use the term werewolf science.
Oh, you may.
The way they handle that in this movie is not that, like, silver doesn't seem to kill them. The silver bullets don't kill them.
It kind of puts them in a dormant state. It's like...
yeah, it puts them in a coma or makes them seem dead, like a tranquilizer almost.
Yeah.
Because they shoot him, Mr. friggin' Spin City shows up, and I think he shoots him like 3 times.
Yeah, he's got silver bullets.
Yeah. He shoots him with the silver bullets and he falls over. And then they have this sort of thing where he just gives a monologue about how they're going to keep him on ice for some reason. And he has this bit where he stands and he talks to... They freeze him and they have this really unnecessary shot of the full frontal nudity of this man in a vat with his wab out and everything. Just like, there he is. All right, get an eyeful, lads.
Yep.
Lovely. So we're looking at this guy standing in this vat, and Spin City, he's in there, and he's like, I guess they've frozen him, and Spin City just orates to him about how, we're gonna find a way to control you, ha ha ha, and like is gloating like a villain.
Yeah, big time. No, he's they should have had him grow a mustache just so he could twirl it.
Yeah, but they didn't, and that's okay. I think the mustache in my mind works fine. He's doing that all with his performance. That's grand. So at that point, right, this guy's frozen. Then we flash forward 20 years.
Yes, 20 years
1994.
Exactly.
Yeah, to 1994. Spin City hasn't aged a day.
No,
I gotta say.
He's looking well.
he looks really well for a man who's 20 years older.
We're not that old, and if we look at pictures of us from 20 years ago, you will go,
baby.
Wow, I look like a child.
I think we were technically children then. Actually, 20 years ago. Just about.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah. Okay, maybe that doesn't track too well, but no matter what age you are, if you look back at yourself 20 years...
you're going to see a difference of some kind.
You're going to go, look, I used to be able to smile.
I think I think he might even be wearing the same suit that he's wearing in the previous scene. And so now they changed the name of the place, but it's the same place, but it's like the new secret center, the new US secret center for it's the secret center.
I think he's a line of dialogue that it's meant to be a different place.
It's new. It says new on
but
it.
They still have
the text comes up.
Yeah, they still have that vat that has the butler in it.
Oh, it's the same set.
Oh yeah,
it's
definitely the same set.
It's just a different establishing shot of the outside of the place. That's the only thing that has changed, is how it looks from the outside, I guess. So they have this thing, so they jump forward to 1994, and suddenly they're doing research on fake skin. So it's like
it looks like lasagna.
Yeah, it looks like lasagna with lots of cheese melted over the top of it.
It's the top layer of lasagna.
Yeah, and they're all dead stoked. So there's a bunch of like military guys and a couple of scienticians. I'm not going to call them scientists. I'm going to call them scienticians.
The main one, of course, is Anna, or Courtney Cox.
Indeed.
Like.
Yes.
Particularly 90s Courtney Cox.
Very popular 90s trope there. Yeah, of like the way she has her hair done and everything's just exact. So they're doing that. They're doing research on metal skin, and they have a problem with. They're trying to like graft it on. They're trying to help burn victims. They're trying to make the whole thing like that it's somehow altruistic, and they're being like so that we can have the scientists be good guys.
Oh yes, yeah.
So they're doing it for good reasons, but of course, secret Spin City Mayor is very much like the military applications. Oh, we need this for military, and he needs results from these scientists. He keeps threatening to cut off their budget if they don't get results. And then he suddenly remembers at that point, oh wait, hold on, I have an indestructible immortal man on ice in the back.
Yep.
That I guess we could use for this. Because I think the problem is that the subjects, it might kill them or something, so they need to experiment on something. And he's like, I can get you a corpse. And then they're all like, are suddenly really shocked, like, a corpse? Where would you get a corpse? Oh my god, this is terrible.
Where would the military possibly get a corpse?
So they wheel out friggin' Mr. Butler, who is still dead, but really well preserved. He comes off with some ridiculous like explanation for why he's well preserved, like he's been freeze dried or something.
Yeah.
And they're all like, "Where did you get this body?" And like these are supposed to be intelligent people doing this. These scientists, okay?
Well, they're scientists, yeah.
Yeah, they're doing what is ostensibly medical research. But they don't seem to actually be possessed of medical degrees or any medical experience.
Which is why scientician is the correct word for them.
Yes,
because
which is why I'm using the word scientician, because they're not doctors.
No.
Even though the kind of person who would be doing this research would definitely be a doctor, like a medical doctor probably.
Oh, yeah.
Would start off as a medical doctor.
I'm pretty sure to graft skin onto someone,
yeah.
You need to be in some way medically competent.
Yeah. Which is quite funny. She has in the lead scientist Anna's office or whatever. She has this big sort of model of like the kind of thing you'd see in like a secondary school science room, like diagram of the human skin with like the layers on it.
Well,
because
maybe being a scientician doesn't pay too well, so she has to like moonlight as a teacher as well,
teaching 15-year-old science.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a rich backstory to these characters, Kevin. I can't believe I mean, we have to gloss over it, but you know,
there is probably a rich backstory to these characters. If there is one, it's not in the film.
I just imagine like the original script was really good, like really detailed, and like they just completely tore it apart. Like, there's some scriptwriter out there crying. This was his big chance.
This is too complicated. No one's going to understand this. So then they took out all the smart stuff and just put in, they walk down the hallway.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again. So the scientists get delivered this body of this dead man.
And around this time, that's when Spin City guy, he talks again. He has a wee monologue in front of Butler's
frozen vat,
and he says something about, you know, only this time you'll be under my control and blah blah blah.
But he never does anything to make that so. He says this time you'll be controlled by me, and he's like, you think, oh, is he gonna put like a control collar on him, or maybe he's got a special chip that he's gonna put? No. There's nothing. There is literally no reason for him to think that he's going to be able to control him.
Yeah. There is a slight... well, I suppose at this stage there is, like... It's not communicated too well. But Anna does say something about, like, he's unlikely that he'll have his memory intact and stuff. So you go, okay. But the guy literally, like... Well, no, we'll get there because they get him. They're putting this lasagna on him.
That's the thing. The plan is not for him to be reanimated, though. The plan is that he is a corpse that just isn't rotting, so they can experiment on it.
Yeah.
Because apparently in this movie, by the way, yes, as part of werewolf science for this movie, apart from the silver putting them to sleep, also werewolves are immortal.
Yes.
Which I believe was that was a thing that was explored in Len Wiseman's Underworld. I believe the werewolves in that also did not age. But in this movie, so werewolves, there's a lot of weird vampire stuff actually in this. Like they're afraid of crosses. There's a whole bit at the beginning where the guy has a cross.
Yeah.
And there's a whole thing with crosses later on. But anyway, so their plan is not to operate on a living thing. The scientists, as far as they know, this is a corpse. This is just a dead man who died of natural causes. And then they're like, oh my god, there's foreign objects here. So they've already done some grafting. So they've been working on this corpse for a bit.
Yeah.
And they've grafted a whole bunch of weird fake metal skin onto this corpse. And then they realize, oh, there's 3 bullet holes in this guy that we didn't notice in his chest.
Everyone's terrible at their jobs in this.
Yeah, right in the center of his chest. 3 bullet holes, exactly equidistant. And they're like, oh my god, this man was murdered.
Say what you want, say what you will about Spin City, but fuck, that guy can aim.
I mean, yeah, his cluster pattern is spot on. Like, I mean, right in the heart. So then they take it upon themselves, like, well, let's just dig out these 3 chunks of metal. And which, of course, leads to him almost immediately reanimating on the table.
Yeah.
And then they get a Spin City man comes in. He's like, "What are you doing?" And they're like, "Oh, you didn't tell us. This is crazy. This man was murdered." But then they carry on working on him.
Yeah.
And that's the point at which he says, "Oh, it's not likely that his memories will return."
That's right.
But,
yeah.
But for some reason, Spin City really wants his memories to return.
Yeah.
Because that's when he goes and gets the pictures we were talking about earlier that he took, the Kodak moments that he took of his mate getting savaged by the wolf. And, like, stands in front of him like a weird pervert going, "Yeah, look at that." Like, holding it up to his face.
And, like, really goading him.
Remember
and, like,
this.
Like, really trying to piss him off. Like, even if the memories weren't there, you would still be like, what is this dick doing?
Yeah, what is his problem? So the guy then is all metal beasted up in a way, but not really. He's not full on metal beast yet. He's got like a third of his body covered in this weird lasagna skin. And yeah, he's woken up and he doesn't remember. He doesn't necessarily remember everything, but it's sort of coming back to him in flashes. And he just gets more and more ludicrous looking while Spin City gets angry at scientists.
Yeah.
And then for some reason, then they have a scene in which he just pisses himself.
Yes, yeah.
He's just lying on...
Poor Larry has to clean it up, and he's all like...
Yeah.
Ah.
So they've been having him hooked up to these machines and measuring his life signs, it seems, for a while.
With a lie detector.
With a lie detector. Yes, they have a lie detector out there doing its wee scribblings, and she talks about their needles. She talks about the needles a lot.
Yep.
So up to this point, they haven't apparently had this problem, but all of a sudden, they are like, we just get treated to a shot of a bunch of water falling off the side of the table, and then it's just implied that he's just pissing everywhere. And then they get really aggro about, and again, this is people that I had assumed were experienced medical professionals, but at this point, it becomes very clear that they're not, because one of the guys is revolted at the idea that he might have to touch this man's penis. And then they're like, can we make a catheter out of some of these tubes? You're like, I really hope not. I really hope that you're not just whatever tubes we happen to have lying around. And then that other guy, also the guy that she asks that to, is this guy who is just constantly nervous all the time.
Oh yeah.
He's like he seems to have the role of like an assistant almost. He's a sort of balding short fella, and throughout the entire movie, his entire demeanor to me felt like he has the gait and the sort of vocal resonance of a 5-year-old who has pissed themselves and is trying desperately not to cry. But it's just constant. He constantly looks like he's about to burst into tears. He walks in a sort of a gait that, like, side to side gait that implies that he's trying, to keep his legs apart because he's wet himself. And he also has his shoulders up slumped and his arms sort of out by his sides like a child, sort of waddling. And he's constantly just going, like that's the way he talks for the whole film until he meets his sticky end. But yeah, so he's like. She asks him about catheters, and he looks like he's going to have a mental breakdown as soon as she says about putting a catheter together.
Yeah, no one in this facility should be doing what they're doing. Essentially, no one has any medical experience. No one has any. It gets to the point where you're like going, "Is this biomere, as they call it? Is this biomere actually just lasagna, and these people are just all crazy?"
Yeah, maybe they're just surgically replacing his skin with old lasagna.
Yeah.
Which is believable.
And you know what? Project Lasagna Beast would be much better.
That would be much better. And they have all these weird superfluous scenes of bonding between the scientists and the military people, so they all get along.
Yeah, I can't even remember those bits really. I remember seeing them all at a table playing poker.
Yeah, they have a scene in the break room where they're playing poker that seems to go on for 1,000 years, where they're just staring at each other and mentioning things that we don't have any context for, and they're saying it in the badly recorded dialogue that you can barely understand anyway.
Thankfully, they left out the extent. I'm assuming the extended cut has scenes of them walking towards the poker table.
I assume we missed out on a lot of let's get to the break room and play poker. But there's a military man there who we're introduced to, whose name I don't remember and I don't care to remember.
No.
Who it feels like he's
that might
a love
be
interest.
Lance Slaughter for all we know.
Indeed. It feels like he's a love interest of lead scientist lady.
Yeah. They don't really go anywhere with it.
No, maybe they had other scenes they shot that really cemented that, because they act like sort of that they have a history, but they don't really communicate it very well. And he somehow is at a certain point of the movie able to make like a silver warhead, which I don't understand how he's able to make that in like 15 minutes. But anyway, the Metalbeast eventually inevitably breaks free of his restraints, and goes rampaging. And I think the first person he kills is the guy who didn't want to touch his dick. The guy who went, yeah, I do, I'm not going to touch that guy's dick, and ran out of the room. He rips him to pieces, and then they capture him again by sedating him with, she has to like stick a syringe up his bum. They don't really say.
Because it's like
they've gotten to the point where most of his skin is the indestructible metal skin, but they haven't done his gooch yet. So they just go in underneath and get him in the tent and get him there. And then he breaks free again and just starts murdering, and then kills the giant 5-year-old that's wet himself.
And I kind of love that anytime there's dead bodies, it's actually the same with Butler. They put the bodies in the kitchen freezer.
Yeah,
like the walk-in freezer.
Oh, the kitchen. Oh, man, we got to talk about the chef. Yeah. We got to talk about the chef from the facility. Oh, my. This, like, I don't know where he's supposed to be from. No. I think he was trying to do, like, a It's a Me Mario kind of voice, like he's an Italian chef, but he drifts in and out of Polish.
Yeah.
To the point where I just imagine it's an American going, this is what European people sound like. But he gets all bent. I don't know how he fucking knows what they're doing, or that this guy is a wolfman at this point in the movie.
See, in this facility, everyone works as a team, It's like those game company you hear where, like, everyone takes part in the art design and the how the game's going to run and things like that. We're all a big family here, and then you find out they're all, being tortured and.
Yeah, you have to work 48 hours a day somehow.
That's the way this facility operates,
Yeah. So and the chef who is so bent out of shape about the whole thing, the scientists are having a full-on fight with him in the kitchen about the fact that he wants the place to be blessed with holy water and stuff, or he's gonna go on strike. And then he dramatically takes off his chef's hat and throws it onto the ground and storms off. I think he's still there though, because he somehow ends up dead later.
Yeah,
he's dead on the floor later. But they acknowledge that later during one of the surgery scenes, where one of the guys says, "I can't believe we got peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for lunch."
That's right.
Like, why is this labor issue? Why is this union issue become a thing? Like why is the fact that the kitchen staff have gone on strike?
Project Metalbeast has a lot of layers to it.
Yeah,
much like a lasagna.
Indeed. So then the guy gets out. He breaks out. He's running around the facility. They're like, "Oh no, something's loose," and we're treated to something that happens a lot in movies, of the lone security guard wandering around in the dark.
Yep.
And he is sort of like talking to people on his little thing. They're like, "Oh, we need to find. Apparently the cadaver has escaped." So he's all like, he's on his own. You're like, "Oh, this guy's for it." And he walks outside, and the guy's like on his wee radio, like, "Do you see anything?" He says, he laughs, and he says, "Nothing out here but a full moon." And as soon as he says that, from on high descends the beast on top of him, rips him to fucking shreds on cue. It's like beautiful. That was my favorite part of the film.
Yeah, that line really stood out for me as well. Like, how many times is, you went outside to check on something and someone else said, "Oh, is there something out there?" And you go, "Nothing out here but a full moon."
And then you're immediately killed by a werewolf, because of course you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then Metalbeast is just going on a rampage around the lab. We we are still
at one
weirdly...
point, he really takes offense at one of those like wee drinking bird.
He does.
Things.
Yeah, there's a first person. There's a lot of the whole walking down corridors thing now converts to first person Metalbeast walking down corridors, which goes on for way too long, where you get his perspective running around. And yes, he runs past a reception desk, and you have the little toy drinking bird going doodle-loop, doodle-loop. And for some reason, he runs past it, stops, goes back, and then we're treated to a close-up of the drinking bird with a big hand coming in, grabbing it and crushing it and smashing it to bits because he's so mad at the toy.
He really hates it.
Yeah, and then he just goes on, and we see a lot, and then we get lots more of people walking down corridors, and
there's a wonderful moment where I know the character's called Larry because they mention him quite a lot. When Larry gets ganked, when he's all deaded, and they're like saying to Anna, don't look at the body, but she insists on going into the walk-in freezer to look at the body.
She doesn't just look.
And again, this supports the theory that these are scienticians and not have no medical training, because she like lifts the cover off, she's touched the body, and she immediately recoils and puts her hand up to her face. And like touches your face. You're just like, oh my god, who does that?
Yeah, like someone who like, and actually that brings me back to actually that man himself with the whole bit. That's the guy that didn't want to touch the dick, right? He at one point, even though they've been working on a corpse for how long, and probably other corpses for a while, whenever the man pisses himself on the table, he runs out of the room and throws up.
Yeah.
At the idea that someone has pissed. And yeah, whenever we're treated to her interacting with his body, doesn't she just lift his entire arm?
Yeah, she lifts
his arm's been torn up. For some reason, she doesn't just go in to look at the body. She's like, oh my god. And then she goes in and lifts his severed arm up for some reason. Like, she just really wants to make sure it's not attached.
Starts like poking him with a stick and like squishing his eyeballs, and
yeah,
she might as well at this
really
stage.
in there.
Just like starts covering herself in his intestines, and no, it's one of many problems with this movie.
Oh my god, yes. But we'll not get hung up on how they're not really scientists. So then the whole thing is that like the one military guy that we've really been introduced to is suddenly on the scene again. The guy who was playing poker with them, and he somehow is like able to melt down some silver that they have lying around and make a bunch.
He takes like these commemorative coins that are all in a display case.
And melts them down and turns them into a weird spike where he mixes them with the weird metal that they've been using to make the skin, so that, you know, because now we've established basically at this point that you can't get through the skin that they've put on this werewolf. So this werewolf is now this indestructible werewolf.
Some would say a metal beast.
Some might call him a metal beast, yes.
But so that's ridiculous and silly, and no one should.
I know, but yeah, so his skin is now all this metal, and he's also a werewolf now. So he is a werewolf that cannot be harmed, even by the silver bullets, because they just bounce off, because he's got the magic science skin that's supposed to help like burn victims. So he develops this, he mixes some silver with the scary metal that they've used to graft onto his skin, because that's somehow going to go through the skin. And he has enough of it to make like 3 warheads or whatever. And so that's his entire purpose, is that he shows up and does that and then is immediately sort of disposed of. He gets messed up and knocked out, and then we don't hear from him again for a long time. Yeah. And Spin City is running around with the military commander being a dick to him, and then the military commander gets annoyed and calls him something, and then he gets pissed off at the military guy and just kneecaps him.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He just shoots him in the knees and says something like "good luck."
No, he says. In fact, no, he doesn't say "good luck." Oh. Right. What he does is he kneecaps him, right, and he says, "Well, maybe he does say good luck to him, but he leaves him there." Yeah. Okay. And then he goes off and away and runs into the scientists and the military guys, and they ask him where that guy is, and his exact quote is this, because I wrote it down. He's standing there, they say, "Oh, where's the general?" And he says, let's just say he's not jumping for joy. It's like, it's the equivalent of like somebody, I can't remember if this is from anything, but it always lingers in my head, this quote. Somebody arrives late somewhere, someone who's killed somebody in the plot of whatever it was that this is from, shows up at a party or whatever, and he goes, oh my god, you're so late. And they dramatically look at the camera and say, I'm sorry, the traffic was murder. Yeah, it's that. He's not jumping for joy because I put bullets in his knees. And he immediately gets eaten by the Metalbeast, so he doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, it's like
after he gets kneecapped.
It's like Mr. Freeze and that Batman Forever atrocity. You know, it's those levels of
shitty one-liners, but they didn't really think about it. As long as it's got something to do with things being cold,
chill out.
That'll do. Yeah, cold or hot, or even actually, no, that movie isn't even consistent with those things.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't really matter. But so Project Metalbeast. So then we've got our three. With Anna, some other girl who does computer stuff occasionally, and Soldier Boy. We'll just call him
Soldier Boy, who is so irrelevant except that he made the warheads with the silver.
Yes.
And then he gets we assume he's dead.
Oh yes.
In fact, we assume at one point we think everyone's dead because the scientist lady tries to shoot the silver RPG rocket at the Metalbeast and just misses.
Oh, and he's not that far away.
No, he's not. And conveniently, once it explodes, bits of rubble just sort of fall from the ceiling on all of the principal cast individually, except for her. So Metalbeast gets buried in rubble, and Soldier Man, I think, gets buried in rubble, and her other computer lady gets buried in rubble. And we're like, oh, well, they're all dead. So then she has a bit where, she like gets up from the explosion and is like, oh my, like she's been concussed from the explosion or whatever.
Doesn't she get a bit of rebar in her foot at this stage?
Yes, she gets a bit of rebar, which was for me was the most impressive effect in the entire film.
Yeah, it actually looked really well.
Yeah, it looked alright. She has a bit of rebar like that has fallen down and gone through her foot. She's otherwise unharmed except for that, but I guess that's pretty bad harm.
Yeah.
When rebar's through your foot. And then we're treated to watching her pull the rebar out of her foot.
And it looks okay,
except for the way the leg moves. It's clearly a piece of wood that somebody just off camera is holding and jigging about. She gets through with that, and then is like, oh, I have to go and check on everybody. And there's Metalbeast buried under the rubble. And as she's passing Metalbeast, she stops. And another little editing mishap here, maybe, I don't know. But we're treated to a scary musical stinger of like something scary just happened, but nothing happened. And then a full 2 seconds later, Metalbeast stands up after the music goes scary, and it's rawr! And at that point, sort of, she runs away.
See, they didn't want to be too obvious.
Yeah. They wanted to. Did they fake me out and then immediately do the thing they faked me out about? I guess maybe they did. So she runs away and is like, "Oh no!" And she has the bazooka and one rocket left.
Yep.
Oh, so there's Metalbeast standing calmly for some reason opposite her, going "rawr," and he
literally does just sit there and go like,
yeah.
Everyone else he immediately like jumps at this. In this scene, he decides, no, I'm better off. Kind of wiped out.
So she shoots the spiky RPG at the Metalbeast, and then it doesn't blow up. It goes, like, I guess to show that it does work, as in the stuff will go through his Metalbeast skin.
Yeah.
We see it impales through his leg.
That's right.
And then nothing happens. She's just staring, going, oh no! Because that's the last one. And then Metalbeast sort of slowly pulls it out, and then as the RPG, as the rocket leaves his leg, as he pulls it out, it actually goes like a cork coming out of a wine bottle, which I thoroughly enjoyed. So then she runs away a bit, and that's the point, I think, where Spin City, who has been just sort of running through the facility, who's been sort of following them because he's trying to get out as well, shows up. And he starts shouting at the Metalbeast, and the Metalbeast sort of throws him about the place and then does a lots of scratching and then holds him up against the wall. And then for some reason we get, at that point, oh, this guy's about to die because the Metalbeast has got him up against the wall. And he takes the time to fix his hair. He
and do his tie up.
He does his tie a wee bit, and then he actually fixes his hair so that he can die with dignity, I guess, right before Metalbeast skewers him. Which is fun. It was just a fun little character moment, I thought, there, in amongst all the dreadful.
I wonder, did he add that in? Was he just like, what, I'm just going to have fun with this?
Yeah, I'm going to do some acting here.
Because fucking no one else is.
Screw you, Alessandro, which is the director, who is just, ugh. So, essentially, he gets dealt with, and, oh no, she's all out of rockets, right? So there was only 2. But then all of a sudden, Soldier Man's just suddenly there again, and we're all like, oh my god, I thought you were dead. No, I'm actually fine. Except he's limping a bit. And he's like, and he literally says, I have another rocket, and just produces a rocket from nowhere, and hands it to her. Now, he's the military guy.
Yep.
He should be trained in how to use these things. And in fact, it was him that provided it in the first place. But instead, he gives it to her, and then has her take their last ditch shot.
Even though
at the
actually,
Metalbeast.
the second time Metalbeast is shot, it's Computer Girl who does it. Because I remember at the time thinking, don't give the rocket to Anna. She's squinty.
She's squinty. So instead, we're treated to Computer Girl getting it. Not the man, not the soldier.
No.
Not the soldier with the military training, but the girl that does computers, which is about the extent of her character.
Yeah.
Is that she does computers and she's maybe bad at poker. I think that's all they really established with her. And of course, lo and behold, like the end of Jaws, it stands there. Somebody says a completely forgettable one-liner, which I know it's forgettable because I forgot it. Shoots at the Metalbeast, hits him point blank, boom. Metalbeast shatters into a million pieces. And then goes all over everybody.
Yeah.
Which I thought at the time, oh, that's a nice wee touch. But then later, it was for a reason later.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh, which just sucks. Which is a funny reason, actually, like the whole thing at the end. I don't care about spoiling the end of this friggin' movie. Because I don't advise anybody to watch it unless they really hate themselves. But they sort of slowly, all 3 of them all together, slump out of the facility. And she's like... They're all covered in the Metalbeast stuff, and she points to the military guy and says, you have something on your face. And it's a bit of Metalbeast skin, I guess. And he slops it off, and it goes on the ground. And they bugger off, and then we're treated to a nice little close-up of the skin, this little patch of skin of the Metalbeast. And it goes, badunk, and it moves a bit, and you're like, oh my god, sequel! No.
And we're still waiting on that sequel to this day.
Yes, we're waiting on that sequel, yes.
With
that's
bated
Project
breath.
Metalbeast. That's Project Metalbeast. Now, I looked up the director of this movie, and up to this point, he made one film after this, entitled Butch Camp. And then that's it for him.
That's no surprise, really.
Yeah, no. So he hasn't really done much else. He made a bunch of low rent horror films before this that I don't want to see. I'd probably advise nobody else to even bother looking at. No. But you never know. Maybe you want to see it.
Project Metalbeast is a slog to get through. It actually.
I was just about to ask John, did you enjoy Project Metalbeast?
No. It's the kind of thing I think, even because it reminds you of those kind of movies that Mystery Science Theater 3000 would handpick because they're that bad. But this one kind of lacks even enough to kind of make it so bad it's good, or like there's nothing really to latch on to. It just leaves nothing. it leaves you with nothing, bar the time wasted.
I can't think of anything to recommend it except, I mean, the reason I even know about it is because of terrible algorithms in streaming apps. That's my fault. I'll admit it.
And you know what? Now the algorithm's just going to get worse because you've watched it.
Now that I've visited this upon you are not going to get recommendations that I get.
I already did. There's so much of the recommendations below it that were like, and it's like a morbid curiosity of like, that sounds ridiculous. I kind of watch it.
That's how this happened to me. I read, like, you read the blurb for this movie and you think, oh my god, that sounds hilarious.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, it says, in 1974, an unhinged CIA agent injects himself with the werewolf blood he found. After a killing spree, his body is put in suspended animation, then thawed out 20 years later by his crazy boss and a team of unsuspecting doctors.
And that's the other thing. What's the reason for this, like, 20-year gap? There's like no... Oh, it's so frustrating. So much of it is, like, nothing
Arbitrary.
makes sense. That, like...
It's arbitrary. Most of it is just, this is what it said in the script, so this is what we're doing.
And like all the motivations, all the character motivations are, well, I think that's kind of the point. Is like they don't exist. There is no motivation. It's just do stuff. You're a scientist who's doing this. You are the evil boss who is evil. You are Butler who wants to be a werewolf for some reason.
Butler who at one point before they take down Butler in the early stages of 1974. Butler shouts, I believe Miller is the name of Spin City, but I prefer to just call him Spin City.
Yep.
But there is a wonderful shot at which he shouts, I'm gonna live forever, Miller! Right before he gets shot and falls down ostensibly dead. And that sums up the entire film for me. It's garbage.
Yep.
It's bad. It's poorly edited. It is... I mean... You want to talk about pacing problems? This film is a pacing problem. It is just it hasn't got any pace.
No.
It's just extended scenes of very little happening. And the gore in it is bad. The effects are bad.
Yeah.
Metalbeast looks awful.
Even for like a budget film, there's sometimes like you can get these films and they're on a very strict budget, but they still manage to get that kind of goriness to some way, to some respect. They get it kind of reasonable, and you can kind of go, yeah, okay, at least they tried. Mm-hmm. This seems like they didn't even try. The design of Metalbeast is atrocious.
Yeah, he looks terrible. Now, I will say I was deeply amused by... Because the way he transforms in this movie is it's not all at once. It is bit by bit. Different parts of his body transform before others. So, like, after he escapes the first time and then they recapture him and have him strapped down to the table, they have this great close-up of his face that's sort of 2/3 transformed. And it's just, I mean, it just looks like one of those silicone oven gloves that you get if somebody's got their hand inside and they're moving it around and... Like his mouth is sort of turning in circles.
He's literally Man Bear Pig from South Park.
Yeah, he looks like the Man Bear Pig from Imagination Land when it shows up. Except somehow, it looks worse than that. Even though that was a cartoon, it looks worse than that.
And even though that's what they were going for, was to make it look.
Like, they wanted it to look. They were trying to have it look like this is a biological nightmare. And it's a big rubber nightmare, and it's so crap. I hate this film. I'm just gonna say it. This film, I had to watch it in 2 chunks. I had to pause it halfway through and go take a break because I kept losing interest in it. I knew while I was watching it, oh no, I need to take this in. But I got to the halfway point and I was like, I need a break. I need to go do something interesting for 15 minutes and then come back.
I regretted not drinking while watching this movie to take the edge off.
See, I was drunk the first time I watched it. I was 3 sheets to the wind. I was half cut. Yeah, I was half cut. So maybe that deadened the impact somewhat the first time. I do remember knowing, I was very aware that it was bad.
Yeah.
But like, it was mainly that the best thing about this movie is the title.
Yes.
That is it. This movie is called Project Metalbeast or Project Metalbeast DNA Overload, whatever you want to call it. Either way, don't watch this film. Okay, so our third film this week was American Werewolf in London, directed by John Landis. Now, I gotta confess to being something of a fan of this man. He has made some of my favourite films. In fact, he's made a film that is most definitely in my... If I had to rank films top 5, I mean, this is the guy who directed The Blues Brothers.
Yeah.
And I love The Blues Brothers. He did Kentucky Fried Movie, which is ridiculous and great. He did Trading Places. I love that film. That's a great sort of
And because of this movie, he also directed the music video for Thriller, because Michael Jackson was very, very impressed with this movie.
As the special effects, in particular, one particular scene, in this film that is still, I think, phenomenal and hasn't been beaten by anything that's come after. But unfortunately, also John Landis, there's a trajectory to his career as with all these people. It's up there with sort of like John Carpenter, where I would talk about John Carpenter and how much I love The Thing.
It has very, very big peaks, but very low troughs.
Indeed, yes. So, it's a man, he made, much like John Carpenter made The Thing, but then John Carpenter also made Ghosts of Mars, and John Carpenter's Vampires, and The Ward, which was terrible, and made some great films in the 80s. John Landis made all these great films in the 80s, and then John Landis made a little film entitled Beverly Hills Cop 3, and it is hard downhill from there, but I don't want that to detract from the man's legacy that he has left in this film.
And this is very good.
Yeah, there we go. I was just about to say, what did you think of this movie? So apparently you thought it was very good.
Yeah, I mean, it was, because I haven't actually seen it in a long time, and I kind of started it thinking, I bet you it'll be one of these ones that doesn't hold up, but all the pieces just seem to work. The actors are very good, and the relationships between them, particularly David and his friend
Jack.
David and Jack, just from the get-go, you're introduced to these characters at the very start, and the rapport that they have just seems so natural and so real.
It's instantaneous. It's just like the first shot you get of them is them like they're hitchhiking on the back of a truck full of sheep, because they're clearly out in,
and they're likable, which I think is important for this to work, to know that you're on David's side, because a lot of the times with werewolf things, the werewolf, the actual person who has this affliction, is a victim in many ways, a lot more so than kind of like vampires and other things. They seem like because they have to deal with the consequences of not being in control from the night previous, and it's kind of it's always very tragic, or I think the best werewolf things are tragic.
Yeah, I mean, you can take that all the way back to the Wolfman, the Universal, the Wolfman with Lon Chaney Jr. I mean, the whole thing with that is he doesn't want to be the Wolfman. He hates that he's a Wolfman. There were a whole bunch of sequels to that, and like throughout them, he's actually there's one of those films where he's just trying to kill himself. He wants to die.
Yeah, and there's a very I mean, this calls back to a lot of those movies in many ways, sometimes overtly, and that whole suicide thing comes up in this one in a very dark and it's kind of funny in a way, but it also very it is disturbing, because it's this person properly contemplating suicide.
And like what you said there about it being funny in a way, that runs through this whole film. There's like really dark things happening, and everything is sort of treated with a little bit of levity, which I think you definitely need. It's very smart for them to do that. You can't just have crushing grimness, or like, if I can bring up a film we discussed before, Underworld, which is a film that has no sense of humor whatsoever. There's nothing in there there's no lightness in that.
Nothing to grasp onto. There's no humanity in it.
Yeah, there's no human element, is exactly what I was about to say. There is no human element to Underworld, really, in a way that you can relate to. Whereas in this film, you're like, that first conversation, they're hitchhiking, they're two Americans in Europe who are on like a gap year or something. Yeah. It feels like, and they're just like, I'm just gonna go to Europe, and we're gonna hang out, and we're gonna have a great time traveling around. And the first place they chose to go to for some reason is seems like it's Yorkshire.
It's very it seems like it's probably nondescript, kind of Yorkshire-esque area.
Yeah, and the first thing they really do is point out that was a mistake, in that like, if you're gonna go traveling Europe now, seems like it is a lovely countryside, and me being in my 30s, I've now grown in my life to appreciate, you know what, being out in the countryside is actually quite nice. So, but you can tell, like, because they're supposed to be, like, they're, like, 20 years old, like, 20, 21 years old, and they're just, like, one of them, David is very much like, isn't this, but this is nice. Whereas his mate Jack's like, we could be in Milan right now. That is, like, they're planning to go to Italy, and, like, they're making jokes about that, and then, like, but they're not, like, he's clearly, like, annoyed about it, but he's not that annoyed because he's happy to be there with his friend and they're still having a good time.
Yeah.
And they're walking through the countryside and they're telling jokes to lift each other's spirits because the weather's terrible. And you immediately get an attachment to both of these guys.
Oh yeah,
right
definitely.
off the bat, because it's just like, again, you know, it's like, I've had conversations like that with people.
Yeah.
I've said these things to people. I've had people say these things to me. This is like, they're very real. They're very, again, much like Ginger Snaps, it's two very real characters interacting in a way that I am familiar with. Yeah, that I've seen other people interact, that maybe I've interacted with people before. You know, it's like, they're really well written. The dialogue there's great. He's telling terrible jokes to his friend.
Knock knock.
One of them's whining about a girl, and the other guy's taking the piss out of him because he's whining about a girl. And it's just, you're immediately invested in these two people, which makes everything that comes afterwards way more impactful. Yeah. So, like, the first thing they do is just, like, it's freezing, they're in the Yorkshire countryside, they're in the moors, it's awful weather, and they come across a pub. A pub with the best pub sign you will ever see. Well, the name of the pub is, of course, the Slaughtered Lamb, which is
But where's the lamb?
It's exactly. It's inspired. They're looking at the sign, and it's a wolf's head on a spike.
But there's no lamb on that sign.
Yeah. It's just like, where's the lamb? It's like it's a wolf's head on a spike with gore coming out of it, and like really well painted. And it's the Slaughtered Lamb, and they're like, all right, yeah, very welcoming. And the crowd of people in this pub, like, again, I have been in pubs exactly like this. A local pub in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of a farming community, maybe, and you walk in. And there's no music playing. Everyone who's in there's having a conversation, and you walk in, as these guys walk into this place, and nobody knows who they are, and everybody just falls silent and looks at them like, "Who are you?" And they're just like, "Hey, hi."
Yeah, there was a time where I was working out in kind of just outside Leeds. It was kind of in between Leeds and Pontefract, I think you call that place.
Ooh.
And I was working with these two Scottish guys, and we walked into 3 different bars, and we were met with the same atmosphere of this movie. So it just, when I watch this scene, it just takes me back to that time, being like, "What the hell did I just walk into?" It's like the old cowboy movies where, like, the music stops and everyone turns and looks at you, and you're like,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah, I had a similar experience at a pub in Galway about 2 years ago. but you know, it was just that initial moment of, oh, who's this? Like, we were just out driving in the countryside, and we were just like, I'm starving. And much like these guys do, it was exactly the same thing of, I'm starving. Oh, there's a place there. They've got food. Like, we chalkboard sign outside.
No food.
Went in. Went in, and there was like maybe like 3 guys sitting at the bar, 2 people at a table, and the place was otherwise just completely empty. No music playing, nothing. And just like, you looked at for a wee second, and then the barman, it's like you can almost see him shifting gears, and he's like, "All right, how you doing?"
Oh yeah, that's right. We're open to the public.
Yeah, that's right. It's not just my mates that come in here. Sometimes people happen by, and you know, and it ended up being quite a nice experience. And that's actually exactly what happens in this film as well, because they walk into the bar and everybody stops and they look at them. And it's this charged atmosphere where it's weird. And then they sort of break the ice of like, hi. And they ask like for food. And it's like, there's no food here. Like, okay, cool. This guy's not being very welcoming. And then it's like tea. And then you can tell like the woman behind the bar is like, there's no... So she says, they say, we've got tea. And then... they say, "Oh, can we have some tea then?" And it's like, "I don't have any tea." It's like, "Oh, wait, I'll put some on for you." And then they sit down, they get settled, and then all of a sudden, like, they just sort of say hi, and then all of a sudden the atmosphere changes back everybody's suddenly just like.
I mean, there's still
okay.
like a level of animosity. Like there's an underlying level of like, you do not belong here.
Yeah.
Through, like, no matter who walks in that bar, because a doctor goes later. There's always like this underlying, like, you know, this is, and it never to kind of, well, not so much spoil, but you know, to kind of ruin things for later. Like, it doesn't explain anything that's going, like, why this,
I feel
why
like,
they
I feel
hide
like,
this secret and stuff like that.
I feel like they imply that they don't want the outside world to know about what's happening there.
Yeah.
Like they're a very secretive community, and like, yeah, I mean, you'd wonder why, but I mean, I guess it's sort of exemplified by something that happens in that scene where they have a pentagram on the wall.
Yeah, and it's never explained. It's
they want it to be explained. Like Jack really wants to know what it's all about, and David does not want to know. David is just like,
would you be more of a Jack or a David in this scene?
I'm definitely more of a David. Like, that's me. Like,
yeah, I think I'd be more Jack. I'd be going, no, seriously, what the fuck is it?
Yeah, I'd be curious, but I would also not want to upset anybody. I'd be the guy. I'd be sitting quietly. I'd sit quietly and enjoy my pint.
So you would have been right to do so.
Yeah, because like literally, like the guy, a guy who seems to be the ringleader almost. It seems like of the community who's there in the pub.
Yeah.
He, as soon as he starts acting normally, everybody else follows suit. Because he turns around, he turns his chair and sits down and is like, hey, I'm going to tell a joke. And then all of a sudden the atmosphere just relaxes and everybody is cool and nobody's freaking out anymore. All of a sudden it doesn't matter. Is it Brian Glover? I think is his name.
Yes, I think that is.
You might recognize him from Alien 3. He plays the warden.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, and he's been in like a lot of British TV shows in which he ordinarily plays. He gets typecast a lot as a rough lad, you know, like a thug.
He has that kind of look, which you kind of imagine he's probably completely different, because that tends to be the case. He's probably
he looks like a big scary skinhead.
Yeah,
and I think maybe he's just naturally bald and a large man, so he's just sort of fallen into those kinds of roles. But you'll also maybe know him as, this is something I remember seeing him in Alien 3 and recognizing his voice when I was much younger, and that he is also the gaffer from the Tetley Tea ads. The nice, kind gaffer who's always like telling you, "Oh, that's Tetley," and you're lovely. He's got this really nice voice when he wants to, but mostly he talks like that. And he's just like, he always sounds like he's just about to have a fight.
Yeah, and I think Monty Python's kind of ruined me on that particular accent, because all I can hear is
Yorkshire.
All I can hear is Graham Chapman going, "One of crossbeams went askew and treadle."
Sorry, what does that mean? Yeah, that whole thing.
So it always like, I think that again, that's just me because I'm not exposed to that accent too much. But all I ever think is just that Spanish Inquisition scene.
Yeah. And I mean, if that's something that you see earlier in your youth, you're just going to associate that with it every time. It's terrible. Apologies to anyone from Yorkshire.
Yeah,
I feel a bit bad now. So anyway, so he is this.
Oh, we have awful accents, I'm sure.
Oh my god,
people can pick up on that.
I believe I once heard our accent described by a friend of mine as a bunch of typewriters chewing tinfoil falling down the stairs.
That's probably the best way to put it.
Yeah, as soon as he said it, I was about to be like, no, and then I thought about it for a second, and I was like, nah, mate, that's spot on. That's exactly right.
I think he's taken that from something. I'm nearly
sure. I think he might have. I think he was quoting someone.
Yeah.
When he said it, I was very drunk at the time, so I don't really remember. But I remember thinking that's a really good analogy for what people from Belfast sound like, especially when they're angry. Like, hey, fucking what? What you fucking say to me, mate? You fucking come over here, you fucking country. You know, that kind of shit.
Yeah.
That was
all
English, by the way. Yeah, that was all the Queen's English, as it were. There, believe it or not. All right, so American Werewolf. Then
so they basically upset them when they ask about the pentagram, like instantly.
Because David's just like, shut up, don't ask. We're gonna get our tea. We're gonna sit here quietly. And Jack's like, ask him, because the guy's in the middle of telling this joke to the whole pub, and everybody's listening and laughing, and he just keeps interjecting, whispering to David, ask about the pentacle, ask about the pentagram on the wall. Ask him. It's like, don't ask about the pentagram on the wall. Why not? Because it's, I don't want to embarrass them. Oh, you think they'll be embarrassed? No. And then like everyone, the guy gets to the end of the joke, tells the punchline, everyone's having a great time. You're like, oh, this seems like a nice pub. And then he just goes, hey, what's with the pentagram on the wall? And then all of a sudden,
get out.
Dead silence. And it's just like, I think it's time you were on your way. You're like, yep, okay. And like, David's just like, yeah, we just need to go now, all right, come on.
And then this is like the second time they get warned to stay on the road, keep off the moors.
Yeah,
which is
the guy who dropped them off. Yeah, the guy who dropped them off in the sheep truck.
Yep.
Tells them stay on the road, don't go off into the moors. And like as they're about to leave, like the landlady of the pub is telling off the people of the community before they even leave the pub. She's just like, you can't make them go out there. Yeah. And they're like, no, it's okay, we don't mind, because they think it's because of the weather. But she's just like, no, you can't make them go out there. And they're like, they chose to come here, they're not our responsibility. And you're like, oh man. And then like they leave, and she's like, one of the guys in the pub looks at him and says, so it's murder then?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my god, what? Like, if you don't know what's coming now, obviously going into this film, you know what it's called. You know it's called An American Werewolf in London. So you know exactly what's coming from the title of the film.
Yeah, I mean that's the great thing that this all plays out, and this is why it doesn't need explained. We know why they're worried, why these townsfolk are worried, but our protagonists here have no clue, and it's
it's
this foreboding atmosphere that's created is so good. It just works so well for the scene.
Yeah, and there's a very English thing for there to be like, oh, the beasts of the moor.
Yeah,
it's like there's a lot of like weird English folklore that still persists. Like they talk about there's such a thing as the beast of Bodmin Moor. There's something people still talk about. Like, and there's people who think it's real. You know, there's people who think it's really out there. And like that's a thing that if you're maybe English and someone's talking about, ooh, the moors, that's one of the things you think of about the moors is, oh, there's something out there. Whereas if you're an American, you're not thinking that.
No,
you might think of that about the woods, you know, or something like that. Ooh, spooky things in the woods, not in the moors, because moors are big open spaces.
Yeah,
you know, they're hilly and whatnot, but they're generally the sort of definition of a moor really is like, you know, it doesn't have trees on it. There's not a lot of places to hide. Yeah. It's just sort of big open rolling hills and rocks and bogland and marsh, stuff like that. So they're none the wiser. They just think, oh, we've upset these people and now we're being thrown out, and that's fine. And of course, so they immediately disregard. Well, I don't think it's that they disregard. It's just that they're just not paying attention.
No, they're kind of just chatting away and kind of walk off the path. To be fair to them, they don't seem like they fall that far off the path before they get attacked. But it's edited in such a way that it could more time could have passed than we've seen.
It's one of those great, like, cinematic editing can be done in such a way where you're like, no matter how ridiculous this might seem on the surface, the way this is edited, I accept it.
Yeah.
So you're like, you don't know, this could be 15, 20 minutes later, you don't know. It seems like it's just a minute or two after.
Yeah.
But you don't know. And you literally see them. I mean, you can see it happening in the film. You literally see the moment where they wander off the road turns and they don't. And they're just so busy talking at each other and having that real intense conversation about what's just happened.
Yeah.
But they're still sort of having the crack, though. They're back to having the crack about their trip around Europe and stuff, and then all of a sudden they hear a noise, and that at that point David is just like, oh wait, where's the road?
Yeah.
You're like, oh no, they're screwed now. And this just terrifying. Now they do use the same sample of the wolf over and over again, which is a bit of a thing, but apart from that, it's fine. And they're just like, you know, that great scene without
should be mentioned that it's also very foggy, and that's why, like, they're not two idiots who, you know, they've straight off the road and can't see it. Like, there's a lot of thick fog, so that explains why. Because it's the moors. Of course there's going to be fog.
Yeah, it's the middle of the night. It's hard to navigate. It's fine. You know, we're not gonna start picking apart character motivations or anything like that, because they're all, to be honest, all that stuff is golden.
Oh yeah, it's very good.
So yeah, obviously what happens then is blah 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 blah. Werewolf attacks. Jack is destroyed.
Jack is completely eviscerated.
Jack gets horribly. The thing is, the first thing that happens is David runs away. And Jack is behind him getting savage.
Which again I like, because it's that fight or flight thing. Like David's first reaction is he just sprints, and he actually starts going Jack, and he realizes his friend is getting attacked, and
yeah.
So you see
he rolls his eyes at one point because he knows he has to go back. He slows down, stops, and is like, "Oh, Jack!" And then he turns around and goes back.
Yeah.
You're like, "Oh no!" And he is just shredded up. And then he gets jumped, and you're like, "Oh, this guy's dead now too." But the title is An American Werewolf in London, and they're still in Yorkshire, so you know that's not going to happen. Shot out of the dark. They are rescued by, of course, we assume, guilt-addled locals who eventually wised up.
Yeah.
After being told off by the pub landlady for being so horrible, went out there to help them, but obviously it's too late. And
too late for Jack, anyway.
Yeah, you get that great thing that you get in almost every werewolf movie, where the werewolf who does the infecting is immediately killed, and we look over and see it, and it's just a person lying there with bullet holes in them. And again, as far as we know, there's no silver, none of that. In fact, they do make mention of that at one point about the silver.
Yeah, don't be ridiculous.
Like, he laughs. Yeah. They say don't be ridiculous, and he laughs. But yeah, he just gets shot with a gun. The end. And then the next thing he knows, he's in a hospital in London. And of course, he doesn't know what's going on, and he has the dream sequences in this movie. Oh, I love them.
They're brilliant. They're so well done, and they escalate so well. Where like it starts off, it's just like the first person view running through the forest, and then the next one's like he's naked running through the forest, and you're seeing him from a third person. And then the next one, there's like he's seeing himself in a bed, and he kind of turns into a beast.
Yeah, it's good. It's really well communicated. And then you have, well, we'll get to that eventually.
And plus,
the final
it helps.
dream sequence.
It kind of helps at that stage break up the, because the hospital. He ends up in a hospital in London after this attack, and Anna is the nurse who's looking. Is it Anna? Yeah, it is. Anna is the nurse looking after him. Build their relationship up. They want to do that. They want this to feel like there is an attraction there, and there's.
No, her name's Alex.
Alex.
Anna was the movie.
Alex.
Anna was the girl from Metalbeast.
Oh God. They all begin with A.
You need to write to Jenny Agutter and apologize.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
But Alex, and she does a brilliant job portraying Alex as well. But
to be honest, I think I find a lot of what she does unethical.
It's really it's really questionable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she immediately falls for her patient and is very overfamiliar. You know what? And he's doing the same thing, from an ethics standpoint of she is his caregiver, nothing that's going on here is okay.
Yeah. But what could have been very slow is if they hadn't had those dream sequences in, all that part where he's in the hospital, there's nothing, because he's acting like a normal guy. He kind of dismisses his dreams as just it's just that, and there is this whole thing of a lot of it could be survival guilt and survivor guilt. Did I say survival guilt?
Yep.
But these dreams help kind of break that up and kind of keep reminding you, something's not right here.
Yeah, where he's literally running through the forest and jumping on and attacking a deer and ripping bits out of it and eating it. You're like, yep, that's not normal.
The guy who appears, it's like a lawyer, whoever, to explain to him that, and overly cheery, kind of explaining, your friend is dead.
Oh, Frank Oz.
Yeah,
right.
That's Frank Oz, who also plays Miss Piggy, who's in this.
I know. Who's in? Yeah, they have a little scene of the Muppets playing on the TV as well, which is a nice touch. But yeah,
Frank Oz has done loads as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's directed a lot of great films.
Yeah.
A lot of Jim Henson films are directed by him.
Yes. Yeah.
But when he talks, I can't not hear it's Fozzie is the voice I always hear. I always think he's going through and he's telling him that his friend is dead, and every time he said some serious thing, I was just expecting him to go waka waka waka.
He also has a striking resemblance to David Cross.
He does, doesn't he?
Mainly
he really looks like David Cross.
Mainly David Cross in Arrested Development, which adds a whole level of hilarity to that whole scene.
Yeah. You're just expecting something that you're just expecting him to say something ludicrous, but he's not. He's just the uptight embassy guy.
Yeah,
I think he's come from the embassy to explain to him that his friend is dead and what happened. And he's like, "That's not what happened." It's like, "Oh, it was an escaped lunatic attack." He's like, "No, it wasn't. It was a big beast."
Yeah.
What are you on about? We get through all that. He spends his time falling in love with the nurse, and she him. And then when the most unethical thing happens, and that once he is discharged from the hospital, she's like, "Don't you have a place to stay?" And he's like, "Nope." And she's just like, "Oh, well, you can just stay with me."
Yeah, that bit's a wee bit... Oh, what?
She brings him to her flat, and then immediately... there is some awkward stuff, I think, in the dialogue with that, in that...
Especially, like, she offers him to stay in her place after he's said to her that he's seen his dead friend. He sat and had a conversation with his dead friend. So Jack appears to him.
Yeah.
It's all very strange, this as well, because Jack appears as kind of like a zombie type creature, and he interacts with the stuff around him.
Yeah,
so
it is implied that he is really there.
Yeah.
It's just the only one who can see him is David. Mm-hmm. Because he's like, "How can I see him?" And it's like something to do with... It's that until the bloodline of the werewolf is severed, he and all the other victims of werewolves are doomed to walk the earth in limbo. But yeah, he is like he's picking stuff up and messing around with stuff in a way that you assume means he is real and he's really there, although he doesn't really... He thinks he's in hallucination.
Yeah.
Or he is convinced of it, at least by her. And yes, he then explains that to her, and then after that, she is still just like, "Yeah, you can come stay in my house." This guy who's convinced that he might become a werewolf.
Yeah, this guy who might be, an absolute psychopath at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, and every time his mate shows up, his mate does tell him to kill himself.
Oh, yes.
He's just like, he's just like, "You gotta end your life, David." He keeps saying to him, "You gotta end your life." And like, he is, I think, for a while, it is just like he thinks he's just having hallucinations.
Yeah.
Until something actually happens. So yeah, he goes to stay with her. She just straight up takes him around her house, and then it's like, "Oh, there's one bed," and then it's just like, "I find you very attractive."
Oh no,
which is just
because she has some of the best lines. It's not just that; it's "I find you very attractive, and a little bit sad."
And a little bit sad. Yeah. It's like, yep. So it's pity sex then.
Which
okay,
isn't the kind of what you want to hear from your
nope. Anyone.
Yeah,
you don't want to hear that from anyone, John. It doesn't matter who's saying it. You don't want to hear that.
Be sleeping with.
Yeah.
It's like, "Oh, I find you very attractive, and a little bit sad."
And a little bit sad. He's like, sad. Yeah. I mean, he does acknowledge that that's pretty fucked up, but he doesn't care.
Because one of her other lines that I think's brilliant, and it's kind of jumping the gun a wee bit because it happens later, is like there's a kid that she deals with in the hospital who just all he says is
I love him.
No,
I love him.
And like no matter what she asks, and she says, "Have you ever been severely beaten around the face and mouth?"
No, have you ever been severely beaten about the face and neck? And he says, "No." And he goes, "Yep, that." She says, "That tracks."
But yes. Oh, actually, we didn't mention possibly the best of the dreams, because once Jack appears, he seems to kind of replace the dreams.
It happens. It does happen a bit later. It happens.
Oh, does it?
The best dream happens after he's gone to bunk up with her and they have sex. It happens after that. He falls asleep there and wakes. It's after he wakes up there for the first time. Yeah, that's just wired up. It's like he's there. He's at home with his parents and his family.
Yeah.
And then there's a knock at the door, and they open the door, and there's all these Nazi monsters with machine guns that force their way into the room and start shooting the place up and his family. And like, one of them, like, they all come in through the window and shoot everybody, and then you have one of those moments where he wakes up and he's like, oh my god, my dream, and like your Alex is there and she's like, oh god, what happened? And then all of a sudden a Nazi monster comes out of a cupboard and grabs her and like cuts her throat, and then he wakes up again and you're like, okay, right, that was a dream within a dream.
The special effects for the monster slits his throat in the first kind of the first dream. We're getting all Inception and with this, the dream within a dream within a dream. But the throat slit is so well done. It's actually
the gore's really good. Like at that point, you look at like the big monsters in that scene, and the masks look okay, but they look like big rubber monster masks, you know, which belies, I think, how good the rest of the effects are in the film. I think maybe that's deliberate.
Oh yeah, it feels like it's very much.
It's strange and it's in a dream and it makes sense. Because if you look at that, if you were like the first time you saw this film, you might be like, oh, the effects in this aren't that good. Maybe this is a bit stupid.
Yeah.
But then, of course, what happens is the nurse has to go to work and has to leave David all alone in the flat. And he doesn't know what to do. There's that great sort of really, again, another like establishing humanity scene where he sees her to the door and out into the street and she goes off to work. And then he turns around and realizes he's locked himself out. And he has to figure out how to get back into the flat. And like he's trying to break in through the window and stuff. And like that was really good. And then he has a whole day where he's just bored out of his tree.
Yeah.
Because he's alone in a strange city and he can't really leave the house because if he does he won't be able to get back in again. And he doesn't have anything to do and all the stuff on TV is awful. Like he has a go flicking the channels on the TV and everything's just really aggressively garbage. And there's this great sort of ad for the News of the World.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, the
awful newspaper.
Naughty Nina.
But Naughty Nina tells it all. You're like, oh god, it's sickening. It's like, yep, that is British tabloid culture summed up right there to a T. Well done. And he's just like, nope, and turns the TV off and starts to read. And again,
it all helps because we've all had those days where you're just milling about and you know, no right to be bored really, like, you know, but you're just kind of like,
I guess in today's world, it's the equivalent of
nothing to play, and you've like a stack of video games.
I've nothing. No. It's like I've nothing to do, and for some reason my internet is gone out, and now I'm paralyzed because I'm so used to having the internet.
Yeah.
That I can't now think of anything else to do, and then you get into the point where you're like, maybe I'll read a book then.
Almost like it's something dirty. Closing the curtains and all. Oh god, what if someone sees me reading?
Do I dare glance at the printed word? Oh no. So he does that, goes through all that crap, and then we are treated to a scene that I don't think has been rivaled in another film. Now, there's plenty of other films that have like grotesque things happening.
Oh yes.
Again, like I'm going to say, it's a film that I talk about all the time because I love it, but The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing is full of stuff like that where you're like, oh my god, that's horrific. Whereas the thing about what happens in this movie, so obviously that evening it's a full moon and he transforms into a werewolf.
Bum, bum, bum.
Shock horror, American Werewolf in London has a werewolf in London in it.
Jesus.
So he's just suddenly, it's extremely sudden. He's just holding a book and then all of a sudden he just throws the book on the ground and stands up and holds his head and starts screaming. It comes out of nowhere to the point where you're like, what the hell's going on? And then that gets completely just swept away by what happens next, in that the way he transforms is just phenomenal. It looks so good. It's the thing that people it's referenced a lot when people talk about really good practical effects.
Yeah.
People will often point at the transformation scene in American Werewolf in London. It's just, you know, he falls on the floor and he's screaming and he's writhing around and his acting's really good. His physical performance is really good anyway, which, you know, is really important in a scene like this. So he seems like someone who's really, really in distress, and he starts to contort and move around, and there's this great scene where like you see his nails, claws start coming out from underneath his nails and pushing his nails off, and it's horrific. And like he looks at his hand, and there's just that's the bit that really gets me.
Yeah,
you see him.
the skin just stretching and like the contortions and.
He's looking down at his hand, and the palm of his hand is elongating in a way that is incredibly physical and real, and it looks like it hurts.
Oh yeah,
like it really looks.
And it
like
helps
it hurts
the sound, the sound design on it, where it's like the sound of like bones cracking, and the whole thing is just unpleasant, and
it gives you shivers. It makes you like you again sympathy pains in a way where you're like, that looks really excruciating.
Yeah.
And like to the point his hands are getting longer and he falls down. He's got one long hand and one short hand and he falls on the floor.
And I kind of like it.
His spine starts popping out the back and it just seems really uncomfortable.
I kind of like that they don't shy away from like he's in like a halfway point between David and the werewolf.
Yeah.
And there's times where it looks kind of ridiculous, but you don't laugh at this because everything that's happening at that time is just making you feel uncomfortable, making giving you that creep up your spine. But
like if you just saw the shot of him where he looks like he's got sort of a lion's mane.
Yeah, it looks ridiculous.
And his teeth, that looks like ridiculous. But it's the fact that it's that's a transitional stage and it's something that's getting worse.
Yeah.
And you watch it happen, and then you can see it, like where a lot of other films, like we were talking about Ginger Snaps earlier, and about them being sort of economical with some of that stuff at certain parts where they don't show it, or they don't, they'll look away and they'll use sound design. Here, they were confident enough in what they had to be just like, no, we are going to hold on this, and we are going to let you see this happen.
Yeah.
And it looks great, and you see his spine pops out, and his torso elongates, and his legs twist, and his feet,
and even his screams start becoming more animalistic, and there's just so much thought went into it that it's unbelievable, and it works so well.
It is so believable. It's like, there's very little willing suspension of disbelief, because you look at it and you're like, that looks so good, and you see his in profile, you see his face change shape, the snout pushing out, and then he's on the floor and he's screaming, and then it just cuts.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh no. And then the next thing you know, it's like, oh, here's some people walking down the street in the nighttime. I wonder what's going to happen to them.
Let's go round the back door and scare them.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, we're going to our fancy party. They go out the back, and you're just like, oh, right, I've seen horror films before.
Yep.
They're doomed. And all that stuff is great. You don't see a lot of grisly stuff there. It's all implied.
Yeah.
They do some clever stuff with the camera work there, where now I think when you do see the werewolf in full in this movie, I think it looks great.
Yeah, it looks very good.
They shoot it so well.
They kind of seem to shoot it from kind of above a bit, and I think it allows them. They must have had something in the back, because you don't see like the full thing. You kind of see like maybe 3/4 of it, and any time they have it like that, because they imply with the earliest stuff, like the stuff here where it's attacking people on the streets and it chases that guy in the emptiest subway in London.
Yeah, in the metro. Yeah. Because that's the bit at most where I most was whenever the first time I saw this film, I was surprised at some of the shots there, because I've seen a lot of other monster movies, and if you have something like that where it's something that isn't even human shaped, it's not just something where you can put a guy in a suit. You need to build an apparatus or do something really clever.
Yeah.
To make it seem like this is a 4-legged animal that is chasing someone, and you come to expect, all right, well, they're never going to show us the whole thing. We're just going to see and they do it early on in that bit, whenever those two revelers, the people who are to show up at the party, go around the back.
Yeah.
You get a lot of close-ups of just the head, maybe in the dark.
Again, very much like Ginger Snaps. It's being economical with what it's showing you.
Yeah. They have a in Ginger Snaps, they do exactly the same thing when she is attacked by the initial werewolf. But in this, so it almost lulls me as someone who's seen horror movies before to expect, oh, that's how this is going to be. And then they have the scene in the London Underground where the one guy gets off the train on his own. We guess it's the last train of the night, and there's no one else around. The station.
That's not how London works.
No, I've been to London, and in fact, I can't remember what station it is, but I remember seeing the sign and being like, "Oh, I've been there." Yeah. And like pointing at this and pointing and going, I've probably stood in the exact spot that guy is right now, and that was fun for me. But anyway, so he's like getting something out of a vending machine or something, and then he hears a noise and he looks down and he's like, "Who's there?" Oh, like, standard horror movie stuff.
I'll ring the police.
Yes, exactly. And then it's sort of implied we see the station, nothing's there, then it goes back to him, and like it's implied through his face that he sees something, and he runs away, and we're like, okay, right, that's what this is going to be. They do that in films a lot, where they have the actors be like scared at something. It's done incredibly well in, say, Alien.
Yes.
Where they do a lot of that. And in Alien, they don't show the creature a lot. In fact, they show the creature so little. You only see the creature like head to toe really once in Alien.
Yeah.
And it's for a brief second right at the end before it gets blasted out the airlock. Which is what makes this so surprising, is that he's running away from the beast, and you get a lot of like chasing after him camera and stuff, and he does some outlandishly clumsy stuff.
Oh well, yeah.
I will admit. Eventually he is running away, and then he face plants just straight onto the escalator and then turns around, and then we get this great shot from the top of the escalator of him, the camera's coming up, and we see the bottom of the escalator, and you don't expect it, because you don't expect them to be this confident in their effects.
Yeah.
But you see the wolf creature padding in, and you see pretty much the whole thing, and it looks so real. It looks so convincing, and like that's a real like heart in mouth moment where you're like, oh my god, that's terrifying, because it's huge.
Yeah.
And it is really like a big, huge. It looks like a wolf. The thing about the werewolf in this movie, the werewolf in Ginger Snaps looks like a monster. This looks like a monstrous wolf.
Yeah.
It's massive, and it comes padding in. And you get the feeling, again, sound design here works really well as well, but the sound makes it seem really heavy and beefy, and it's got these big paws,
and also the way they're making it move, like it, and again they keep this up where like they give the impression that this thing can really move when it wants to.
Yeah.
But later in the movie, you get even closer to it. Their shots are close, but it looks like it's they're making it move slowly because it'll look better that way for what they have to make this puppet creature move. And they do it in a way that it's confidently padding through this crowd. It's not running. It's not scared. It's in control. Everyone else is like shitting themselves.
Yeah,
and it's just
doing the scaring.
Yeah. And I think that was a good choice, because a lot of the times, a lot of other movies try to make it move fast. And even Ginger Snaps did it a bit, where like you see the strings when they do that, like once it starts kind of trying to be quick and stuff, you can see the jank.
They have a bit in Ginger Snaps towards the end in the confrontation in the house where it jumps up on a table.
Yes, yeah.
And for a second you think that looks all right, but then there is something sort of wrong with the way it hoists. It doesn't look like it's jumping. Yeah. It looks like it's being hoisted up and then placed.
Yes, yeah.
Whereas in this film, it's behaving much more like a big dog.
Yeah.
And they communicate that. It's somewhere between like a dog and a bear. And it's just, they communicate that so well. And it just, I can't praise the effects in this movie enough.
No, especially for the time. This is actually, out of these three movies, this is the oldest one.
Yeah.
And it has the best effects out of the lot of them.
It's the oldest one, and it looks the best.
Yeah.
They really cared.
Yeah.
They really, really cared about what they were doing, and that they were making something great.
And they had a lot of talented people on all aspects. Like, as we mentioned before, the acting, clearly the puppeteers or whatever, the special effects team behind it, and the director, the choices of the shots really matter.
Yeah, John Landis shot it so well that's really important when you get like, for example, when I was talking about the shot from the escalator of the wolf creature in the underground coming in I mean, that's a cinematographer and a director's decision to shoot it like that, and they think it's going to look best from this angle, and then like, you're like, it does.
And then like they have to meet up with their special effects team and go, can we pull this off? Because the special effects team will go, they could turn around and go, it's gonna look shite.
Yeah, they might laugh in their faces and say,
we
no,
cannot do that. It's gonna look like a giant Muppet.
Yeah, but they didn't. They were like, yeah, I think we can do that. And you know what? They really did.
I imagine they probably went, oh, we'll give it a go.
Aye. And like, yeah, again, there is some good gore in this, much like in Ginger Snaps. There's some good gore as well.
The gore in this is very good. I think.
Like when people get savage. In fact, I think the best of that is when you see when his body count rises, basically, and you get that great scene where everything has happened. You know, he's had this rampage in the night. And he wakes up in the morning and he's in the wolf cage at the zoo.
Yes.
And he doesn't know what's happening. And the wolves are just like standing around looking at him like, right, mate? And he's shitting himself and he climbs out and he has that, again, something dark has just really happened. Like, you had a really genuinely horrifying scene with this man on the subway. He's killed. That bit's really scary. And you have all the other people, like the party goers, who have been savaged to death. And next thing you know, there he is. He's at the zoo, and it's just this hilarious sort of, oh no, I'm in the middle of London and I have no clothes. And he doesn't know what to do, and he doesn't really know his way around, because he just got there. I mean, he never, like, he started off in Yorkshire, and the next thing he knew, he woke up in London in a hospital, you know?
Yeah.
So he doesn't know where he is or what's going on. And, like, he has to trick this kid into giving him his balloons, and, like, it's really funny where he's hiding in a bush.
Yeah, yeah.
He's shouting to this kid, and goes, come here, I'll give you £1.
Yeah, possibly the most terrifying thing.
Yeah, there's a naked man in a bush shouting, offering a kid money, and you're like, okay, great. That's some good stuff. And then he steals a woman's coat, and they have this great hilarious scene where he's standing at the bus stop in this coat that is too short, and wearing nothing but this lady's coat, and he's just standing there, and everyone at the bus stop's trying not. Well, one person's staring down.
One person is like really stern, like trying to like bore a hole through his skull with his eyes.
Yeah, and everybody else is not looking at him, and he just turns to the guy who's staring at him, and he says, "A lot of weather we're having here recently, isn't there?" Like, yep. Yeah, and like that's really funny, which is really important for, again, if you want to talk about something that's well paced, that is this movie, where they have like super intense, highly frenetic scene, and then you have it immediately juxtaposed with this really sort of funny, well paced, well shot, sort of, it feels farcical almost scene where it's this naked man trying to get home basically without arousing suspicion, and it's really good. And then you have the whole, again, when he finally gets back to her flat, and like, she should be really worried because she's just off the phone with her boss saying, here, the police are looking for him now.
Yeah.
And she should be way more worried than she is, which is kind of a
Still,
problem. But
they're
again,
still under the impression that it's like a mental illness that he has, that he will be killing people, but he won't be like some kind of creature. He'll just
I think it's that the doctor says to the police that he thinks he might be involved because he thinks he's a wolf, whereas the police don't believe that. The police believe the doctor that this guy's crazy, but the police are just like, no, these people were killed by an animal.
The police really do not want to arrest anyone in this movie.
Yeah, they go out of their way, like, not to really do very much.
Yeah.
Except there's the one police officer, like the assistant detective, who is quite funny. He's a nice little comic foil for the very serious detective who doesn't really want to arrest anybody and isn't taking anybody at their word. And he's like, don't worry, we'll catch him. You know? And he's like, oh, you feel kind of sorry for him because he just wants, he's one of those guys that just wants to help.
Yeah.
But you know, there's a whole thing running through that from there where they don't think he's actually killing people, but the doctor is concerned that he might hurt himself or others because he seems to believe that he is a wolfman. And I think, the whole thing with her is that she doesn't really take that seriously because she sort of, at this point, she is full on, just as the movies like to, she's full on falling in love with him.
Yeah.
And of course, she's going to think the best of him and she really likes him. And he's a really likable, personable guy.
Yeah,
so
he is.
you would kind of err on the side of, you know what, this guy's okay. And like he comes home and he's like, hey, guess what? I woke up at the zoo. And she's like, what? He's like, where have you been all night? I woke up at the zoo. I don't know. It's weird. And then, but because it does the thing that you see in a lot of werewolf movies where after he's been out killing and eating, suddenly he's full of energy and he's full of vim and he's super enthusiastic, you know, he's doing all that
because
stuff.
before that he wasn't even hungry when he was stuck in the flat by himself, and he was there the whole day.
Mm-hmm.
He just kept going,
one of the things.
I'm not hungry, but
he's been refusing to eat the entire time because like she in the hospital she's trying to make him eat and he won't do it, which is one of the first ways they have like a wee character moment between them where they like she like does the whole haha I'm a nurse and I'm gonna make you eat thing. And that's which I think does well towards their relationship. It's a bit silly.
Oh, it's a bit silly, but it works. It works.
Yeah,
fine.
It works. It doesn't ruin the film, and you kind of get like in ways it informs her character and makes her behavior make sense because she's very sort of she doesn't take things too seriously at all, and she keeps things quite light. So whenever like she gets off the phone with her boss, who's like, "Oh, the police were looking for him," she's just like, "Oh, don't be ridiculous," you know, because that's the kind of person she has been established to be. Yeah, it's like, "No, that's silly. Don't be silly." And he's kind of like that as well until then he sees the news. Yeah, and then he starts to put together, "Oh no, have I actually done something terrible?" I think that's the point where she's taking him. It's that they go out and they're on the way to the hospital, like her boss asked, and he comes across, I think it's a newspaper, where he sees all these killings have happened.
The taxi driver says to him about
talks about the killings, and then he gets out of the cab and runs off, and then lo and behold, up pops Jack again, undead Jack. Doing this wonderfully framed shot where he's in the door, he's far away across the square in like the doorway of like a porno theater, and he's just staring at him and he just waves creepily and he's like, "Oh no!" And that's when he goes over to him, and then we get sort of the proper sort of rundown on exactly what the consequences are of this. Yeah, so he's like, he takes them, they're sitting in the back, and man, the film that they made
I was going to mention
run in the porno theater. It's called See You Next Wednesday, I believe is the title of the movie.
Oh, it's fantastic in and of itself.
Yeah, so they have that, they're sitting watching, every now and then it'll just flick back to the movie, and it's like, it's two people like trying to have sex, and then this man comes stomping into the room, and they have this hilarious scene where he's like, "Oh, you promised me you'd never do this again," and then the woman's just like, "I've never met you before in my life," and then the guy just goes, "Oh, sorry," and he turns around and walks out. Like, this film's crazy. And like then you suddenly realize, all right, this is something they must have made for the film. But
apparently that was the first thing that they shot, and the rest of the movie was all done in sequence.
It's just built around that,
which is very unusual for a movie to be filmed in sequence like that, but. There you go. Bit of random trivia.
Are you saying, sorry, that the scene in the porno theater or the actual film in the porno theater?
The movie in the porno theater was the first thing they filmed for this entire production. Wow. But then the rest of the movie was actually done in sequence.
That is very unusual. So they filmed the whole thing just like in the order that it is presented in the movie?
Yeah, apparently so. That's what I read.
Oh, wow.
Someone might like throw something at me and go, "You're a liar."
I don't care. I'm just going to believe whatever you say.
I'm going to believe because it's more interesting.
Yeah, but so the great thing about that scene, that once he sort of is like, "Oh no, am I actually doing all this stuff? And maybe I'm not crazy. Maybe I am a horrible wolf man." They have Jack basically go for it because Jack is our exposition man. Yeah. And he's a great exposition man because, again, he's likable and he's David's friend.
And the dude, in a way that, because David doesn't know anything about this. You're bit by a werewolf. Or scratched by a werewolf, whatever, and you're infected. Mm-hmm. You don't. Who's going to tell, or how do they, show that this is what's going to happen here? Blah blah blah. So Jack's a nice wee touch.
Yeah, because he's a victim, and we assume he is dead. Yeah, and we don't know how he's gotten to know this stuff. We don't know if someone told him this in limbo. We don't know, and it doesn't matter. Yeah, he is this sort of spooky presence who knows things we don't.
We do know that he was talking to corpses.
Yes,
you've tried to talk to a corpse.
Yes, we know he has been talking to other people in limbo, and that scene is great. As far as what we were talking before about the gore effects in this movie, that scene in particular is great for that because all of his victims are also there.
Yep.
And he has this moment where he just introduces them all. Because obviously David doesn't know them because he was a wolfman when he met them.
Yep.
And like they're all just chatting away to him like normal, and like they're all very messed up. They are all shredded, and there's bits of them. There's like 3 poor hobos who he killed, and there's the couple who were going to the party, and there's the man from the subway. And the man from the subway is extra annoyed at him. The partygoers are super up and enthusiastic and just like, yes, we're dead. And like the hobo guys are being a bit miffy with him, but the guy that he killed in the subway is just mad at him.
Yeah, he's and and this is when they all start like giving him different ways that he could kill himself.
Yes,
and
it's like drowning.
And it's such an unusual scene because he's on board with them as well. Like he's sitting there going, I need to do this. And it's like, I tried slitting my wrist, but I couldn't go through with it. And you know, you're sitting there going, this is really dark.
Yeah. He has that moment where he's just before this, where he's in a phone box and he phones home.
Yeah.
He phones home and talks to his wee sister, who's like 10 years old, and he just wants to, because he just wants to talk to them, and he wants to talk to his parents, and they're not home, and he tells his sister that he loves her, and you get this really realistic sort of moment where you can tell on the other end of the phone that she is not taking him seriously, and she's like, why are you telling me this, you weirdo? And then he laughs, and he's just like, no, come on, I'm serious, you know, and like that's a nice wee moment for him. And then at that point he's like, he's about to cut his wrists with the worst thing you could probably cut your wrist with, which is the crappy knife on a Swiss Army knife. Like, you're going to be there all day hacking away, mate.
Maybe that's why I didn't go through with it. It's like, no, I need something better.
Yeah, so then they're all suggesting ways to, you could get a gun. You know? And then he's like, I don't care how you do it, just do it now. And then, like, the subway guy, and then Jack's like, hey, he's a friend of mine.
Yeah.
Stop that.
It's very nice that like even in death, like Jack's still on his side, and Jack's still got his friends back, and
he does want him to kill himself, but he doesn't want it to hurt.
Yeah,
he wants it to be painless, and that's just like that whole scene is just like the way they're sitting there all bloodied and corpsed up, and they all look awful and they all look great at the same time because they're all just like so shredded.
Plus, it should be noted that Jack at this stage, he decays more every time you see him. So
he's green at this point. He's like a muddy, dark green. Like most of his jaw, the inside of his jaw is exposed.
Yeah.
And you can see his jawline and like one side of his teeth is protruding, and that stuff looks fantastic as well. Yeah. So he looks great. All the other guys messed up look great. Yeah. And on top of if you look at, I don't know if that's like the same departments do that kind of thing. You know, if you're going to have like the guys who do the latex and the gore, and then you're going to have the people who make like the puppets and stuff. But to like have that be consistently great all around is really unique, I think.
It's something, I kind of wish I'd looked that up now, because it is interesting. You know, I'd imagine it's the same company does all of it, but...
Yeah. But it's either way, it's all really, really impressive. And then, of course, the plot from there is basically just like, unfortunately, at that point when he's in the theater, it's got to nighttime again.
Yeah.
And he wolfs out, and you have that scene where like he savages all the perverts. Is that weird? Whenever he starts transforming, he's like rocking the seat in front of him and screaming. And one of the weird perverts in the cinema just gets up and is just standing, looming over him and staring at him while he screams at him to run away, and he won't. And you know, I guess it's implied, everybody in the cinema is dead, probably. And the woman that runs the cinema, like, guy goes in to investigate, he gets killed, blah, blah, blah. The woman that runs the cinema is, like, screaming for police, and the police show up, and you get that great shot of the cop after he goes into the cinema, and there's just gore everywhere, and he shines his torch, and you see the wolf just, like, with its face just buried in a bunch of entrails.
Yeah, it's so well done.
It looks great, and like, that then leads to the cops showing up and the wolf busting loose out of the cinema, and
just mayhem, just like
mayhem,
buses crashing, cars, like that, everything just goes to hell.
Yeah, while this big wolf is again, like you said before, calmly making its way through the city.
Yeah.
That's the point where you're like, it's not panicking and running around. It's padding along at a trot.
Yeah.
And it's just like glaring. I think it's the point at which it decapitates one of the cops at that point. The lead detective,
Yes,
who's the lead detective, loses his head there. And that's a good looking effect too when his head comes off. And it just, from there, it just goes on where it's just like chaos, chaos, chaos. And you have, again, a really human moment with him and Alex there, where I don't know if we want to just talk about the end of the film, really, but
well, it's been out since the 81. It was released, I think.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, but but you do get a good shot at that moment of the wolf in close up.
Yeah.
And it looks great there, and it does look like a big wolf.
Yeah.
You know, it's not the one in Ginger Snaps. Is a sort of a weird, almost hairless kind of
it's
thing.
kind of there's something odd about the Ginger Snaps one. Yeah.
Yeah, whereas this, it looks like a huge wolf. It's got loads of hair, and it doesn't look like someone in a suit. It looks like a big, huge, frightening, angry dog.
Yeah.
And you have this sort of moment of recognition where he looks at her. She says, because she says, "I love you," and it stops for a second, and like you get like real empathy on its face, real feeling on its face for a brief moment, and then so, John, I guess we can just establish that.
We didn't.
Here, John, did you like this movie?
That was shit. It was no Project Metalbeast.
That's true. It was no Project Metalbeast.
We're all agreed on that. No, I think it's a tremendous movie. I think it's the gold standard for werewolf movies. There's no question about that. We didn't actually even mention the lack of music. In this, like, there is music present, but it's usually like a song will play in certain scenes.
Yeah,
and the rest,
the soundtrack is a good soundtrack, like as in the songs and the soundtrack is good,
and they all have moon in the title.
They do. A Bad Moon Rising in particular, Creedence Clearwater Revival is the one that most people think of, I think, when you think of this film, because it plays throughout the film. It plays at one point in the film, the point where he's bored and he's hanging out, he's trying to find shit to do. That movie plays, that song plays, and then over the credits as well, I think, is it comes up again. And there's a couple of different. No, it's Blue Moon and Bad Moon Rising.
Yes, over
the credits, but there's two different versions of Blue Moon in this film. It's the same song twice, but two different versions, like the sort of soulful version, and then the sort of upbeat. Bebop version of it as well.
But it's such an interesting choice as well that a lot of it is devoid of music, but this is the case where it works.
Whereas Metalbeast is devoid of music where it should have filled the air with something. Whereas this movie just lets the scene and the acting do the talking a lot of the time, and the points where there's not necessarily dramatic music playing during werewolf attacks.
No.
It's the vicious sound of the attack and people screaming and all that is enough.
All that is really, music to my ears.
Yeah, that's what makes it work. It's not like there's no sort of exercise in manipulation like there can be in a lot of horror films where they just find
like that, again, another reason why the genre is kind of looked down upon a lot of the times. Is jump scares. Like there's not. Yeah. There are jump scares in this to a degree, but they're. It's a question of like whether they're kind of worth it or earned.
Are they earned? They are earned. They do earn them.
Yeah,
I think they really, really do.
None of them are cheap. They're all kind of they're all like it's led up to it, and you know what's going to happen, and so it's interesting.
Yeah, because some films rely almost exclusively on jump scares, and films like that, I just find that to be obnoxious.
Yeah, it's not scary. It's no. It's the case of, like, I remember, what was it? There was one of those like kind of movies, probably related to like the Nun, or those kind of like movies just before. Universe. Yeah, I think it was one of them. But the scariest scene that I thought it had was like there was an old man sitting in a chair who wasn't meant to be there. He's like this ghost. And that was the best scene, but like no one notices him, and it goes
You
kind of
just
acknowledged.
see him in the background.
Yeah.
You just know he's there in the background. You just see him turn his head,
Yeah.
and then you suddenly realize he's been there the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's stuff like that I find a lot creepier, and that makes the hair stand up in my back. Whereas someone startling you, anyone could do that.
Yeah.
Children can do that.
Yeah, it's the equivalent. I've always thought of it like this. It's the equivalent of, let's say, you come home from work, right? And let's say you live with, say you got a flatmate, right?
Yeah.
Indeed. They say you got a flatmate. So, say you come walking into your house, right? And you close the door behind you and you dander into the kitchen. And your flatmate jumps out of a cupboard and screams in your face.
Yeah.
Okay? Right. So, it's a bit annoying the first time it happens.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay. You got me.
Mm-hmm.
But then you go to the bathroom and you're in there and you're working away and suddenly he jumps out of the cupboard, the towel cupboard, and screams in your face and you're like, okay, don't do that. That's annoying. And then you go into your bedroom and suddenly he comes out from under your bed and he screams at, it's like that.
Yeah.
That to me is whenever you see a film that uses jump scares all the time, it's like that. The first time it's kind of okay. And after that, it's just obnoxious.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't want to live with that guy. I don't want to live with that guy or girl or whoever it is. I don't want to live with that person. I want to turn that movie off at some point. It's like, this is just aggravating now. You're not scaring me. You're just suddenly annoying me at intervals.
It's cheap and lazy.
It is. It's cheap and it's lazy. And especially if it's unearned.
Yeah.
If it's unearned. If they don't appropriately build up to it and justify it. And in this movie, anytime there is a sudden shock, it is 100% justified.
Oh, definitely.
Because, when the werewolf comes out of nowhere, you accept that because it's been established already. There's a werewolf about.
Yeah.
And they use humor oftentimes to justify that with the partygoers. It's funny to watch the partygoers be like, let's go around the back and prank our friends.
Yeah, because we're under no illusion that they're getting to that party.
Yeah, they're never getting inside, and then they're being while they're being savaged. The people in the house look out the window and something's going on out there. And he goes, "It's those bloody kids again."
Because they're the next ones to go because he comes out. Who's that?
He goes out. He's still got his glass of wine in his hand. And he's still drinking it because he's not taking his wife seriously. She's concerned. He's like, oh, whatever. And then she's like, go out and say something to them. And he's like, oh, whatever. So he goes out. He's still got his drink in his hand. He's like, is anybody there? So they do that. They justify it all by having everything around it make sense and be worthwhile and be funny.
Yeah.
Haha, it's really funny that this terrible thing happened and now this guy's not taking it at all seriously and now he's doomed as well. Yeah. So yeah, I hate jump scares, and this movie doesn't really do it very much. It has things suddenly happen. Yeah. But I don't know if I would call them jump scares because it isn't just something coming out of the dark for no goddamn reason. Yeah.
No, it's all leads up to it. It's all. Yeah. I wouldn't describe it as a jump scare either.
Yeah.
Really.
And yeah, I mean, in the hands of someone like John Landis, again, he had at that point already proved himself to be a pretty good director, and at this point I think he became a great director.
Yep.
Not that I'm handing out honorifics, but people aren't looking to me for these kinds of things. Maybe
the Kevin Lenihan Award for Excellence.
Exactly, it's for being a good director and then great. I mean, he would go on to do some things that maybe were less than stellar, but this movie I think is good forever. It's something you're saying you hadn't seen it in a while. I think I probably watch this movie at least once a year.
Yeah.
Every October it comes up. I always do this every year. I always try to watch a horror movie every day of October. And this is usually one of them just because I find this movie a very easy watch.
Oh, it's not it flies in. The pacing's fantastic in it.
Yeah, it's over before it starts, not because it's short, but because you're just it's gripping and it's and again, as you say, the pacing is excellent in this film. It doesn't put a foot wrong, and it's over before you know it. You're it's almost to the point where you're like, oh, is it over already?
Yeah.
And then you look and you're like, oh no, that's a long enough movie. It's just it flew by because I was enjoying it so much.
Yeah, which is what you want. This. Yeah.
It's just
leave the audience wanting more, which you kind of do.
Yeah.
You're like, oh.
Yeah.
Damn it.
I do. I want. No, unfortunately, the more that we got was an American Werewolf in Paris, which doesn't seem to be connected to this movie in any real way. I.e., like John Landis has nothing to do with it. You know, it's not written. I don't think it's written by him.
It's a cash grab.
It's not directly. It is 100%. It's a weirdly late cash grab. It's just like
16
it's
years.
like 1997. I think it came out, and it's just garbage. And I'm not. You know what? I feel like we're in danger of getting into talking about it.
Yeah,
I've only seen the first like half an hour of it. I think I actually ended up watching it directly after American Werewolf in London this time, and the music immediately told me everything I needed to know about that movie from the beginning, and the behavior of the people. They do that sort of once again. Oh, it's Americans in Europe, you know, on like a gap year or something, but they just flub it so hard because the way these people act and the things they say, I immediately hated all of them. Whereas in American Werewolf in London, I immediately am ingratiated with those two guys, David and Jack. David and Jack, I'm just like, I can hang out with these guys. These seem like cool guys. Whereas in American Werewolf in Paris, it's like, oh, these are three obnoxious fools that I would never waste my time talking to. Great.
Does your dog's yipping embarrass you? Are your baby's cries shrill and weak? Well, suffer no longer. Feed 'em Colossal. Our new recipe is specially formulated for both babies and dogs with extra beef hormones. Turn that beagle into a wolf. Turn that baby into a beast. Colossal.
No longer illegal in Europe.
So anyway, American Werewolf in London, thumbs up for me.
Yep, same here. And I mean, I think it's a no-brainer for what one of these three we think is the best movie.
Yeah,
considering we just spent about an hour gushing about the American Werewolf in London.
I think it's very telling that we have spent the most time. Now if we're going by time, I think we spent an inordinate amount of time on Metalbeast, but that's just because there was so much tragedy to cover.
That movie is trash. For these even to be in the same kind of category of anything is beyond me.
It's a disgrace.
It is. It's These two should never be lumped together at all.
Yeah. So I think no question, both of our favorite movies here is definitely An American Werewolf in London. Well done, John Landis.
Yay!
So that brings us to which of these movies is most scientifically useful? Which one of these? Now, there's a certain consistency problem, I think, in something I only briefly addressed about Project Metalbeast. And it is something that has come up, I think, in The Wolfman. And it is kind of addressed in An American Werewolf in London, where they have a witchcraft sort of thing going on in American Werewolf, where they have the thing with the pentagram on the wall in the pub, and it wards off evil, and he even says, I think it's a witchcraft thing. In Project Metalbeast, for some reason, the werewolf recoils from the sign of the cross.
Yeah.
Now, that's not something I have ever encountered. Now, I've read a lot of things about werewolves and werewolf lore. That's not something I've ever really encountered in werewolf lore.
Neither have I. Although there is that idea that people were cursed with lycanthropy with if they were born on Christmas Day, which is mental.
Yes. Could you perhaps be referencing? Is it the Curse of the Wolf?
Yeah, but it's also
Oliver Reed, that Oliver Reed movie. Yeah. That's the whole thing with that movie. Is it like somehow the fact that this child was born on the 25th of December means that they are offensive to God?
Yeah, which is mental. So
yeah,
I wonder is that where they get the cross thing from? But
maybe.
But
yeah,
again,
it's an affront.
But again, it's something I've never really heard of beyond this movie. And if they're an affront to God, then surely they'll just go.
Yeah, but generally, lycanthropy, as they like to call it, which is there's a real condition called lycanthropy. That is because, but it's called that because lycanthropy is werewolfism, whereas it's basically being feral. Essentially, is being a lycanthropy. It's not really a disease. It's more of a psychological condition,
which is probably where this whole idea came from. If you think about small tribes thousands of years ago, and someone becomes feral and goes crazy and kills some of the townsfolk, and then people, things change as the story goes. When they're recounting it to different people, so then it becomes that this guy turned into a fucking wolf and ripped these guys apart.
Yeah, he's the wild man of the woods at some point.
Yeah,
and then,
exactly.
Yeah, as you say, the more story gets passed on, the more it twists and it changes. And I think also people used to write off a lot of actual real conditions with spooky stories and anything you don't understand. So, somebody who was maybe suffered from some kind of schizophrenic condition, who was then outcast and living in the woods horribly, and then maybe their behavior is hard to understand for people because with something like schizophrenia, one of the definitions of schizophrenia is that somebody actually does things that are illogical and believes things that don't make sense, but they really believe them. So someone could become convinced that they're an animal. Someone could be just maybe behave that way. Someone can have really bad mood swings and he suddenly became animalistic, so it gets written off like that. But as far as actual mythology goes, the way these films treat lycanthropy it's fairly consistent in it's sort of disease-like, and sort of spooky, supernatural. Somewhere it's always it's somewhere in between. So in Metalbeast they lever that in with he's afraid of crosses, which they address they address for about 1.5 seconds twice throughout the runtime of the movie. I don't want to talk about that film anymore. No, so screw that film. But
even the fact that he gets impaled with that silver warhead in the leg, and that doesn't seem to stop him. So they can't even follow their own.
They can't even follow their own logic at all.
Yeah. So that leaves us with Ginger Snaps and American Werewolf, and
Ginger Snaps. They use drug dealer science a lot, which is fun and amusing. But I don't know. They take the wolfsbane thing and they say right, we don't have wolfsbane, but here's the thing that's related to wolfsbane. Maybe it will work too. It's monkshood.
Yeah,
and they do.
The problem is nothing is really conclusive in that.
No.
And at the end of the day with Ginger Snaps, so you don't know if does the monk's hood actually work?
No, they do. They do, because VD Man, she injects VD Man and it cures him.
But how do you know is it temporary or is this a long-term solution? Or?
I guess she does assume a lot. Yeah. He chills out, and then he panics and runs away from her.
Yeah.
I guess we don't really get a follow up there. We don't get let's check back in 3 days later and see if he's still got werewolf VD.
So I kind of think American Werewolf has the advantage again because Jack can explain a lot of the ins and outs of werewolves, where he's able to tell you that you don't need silver. So that's conclusive.
Yeah. He has his He has this, I've come here from beyond the grave, so I know things.
Yeah.
He laughs at the idea of a silver bullet. He just calls that out as being poppycock. It also does not seem to do anything in Ginger Snaps.
Yeah, exactly.
So they do address it in that. Again, well, she pulls it out and says this didn't do fuck all, basically, and throws it. And it's
and don't forget, these are kids. Is that real silver, or is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you know this is actually proper silver and stuff? I mean, the whole thing with Ginger Snaps is it's meant to be kind of, they're trying to work out what this stuff is. American Werewolf avoids that problem by having Jack be this, reanimated corpse character.
Yeah. Jack again is this otherworldly force that we know and recognize from earlier in the film, but now that he has died and come back, we can just assume everything he's saying is correct.
Yeah.
because he knows it from being a spooky thing, you know. We just accept that.
So does that mean, as far as survival goes, the American Werewolf takes the lead in this one as well?
Yes, seems so, yeah. Our favourite film is also the best film to scientifically understand and combat the werewolf.
Now, we've only done
So-
2 of these podcasts, and this has happened in both, so we'll see
Yeah.
if this... Maybe this is, you know, we're doing science here. Maybe this is the trend that, you know, a good movie will tell you how to deal with
Maybe.
with your problems.
I think it's maybe just that the people involved thought about it like just way more. So that like when they were writing American Werewolf, they thought of all these things and they thought to mention them. Whereas in Project Metalbeast, they're just throwing a bunch of crap around and hoping you won't notice.
You think there was no thought in Project Metalbeast? Are you crazy?
Oh no, there's lots of thoughts that were just the wrong thoughts. Yeah. So most scientifically useful American Werewolf in London. So as far as that goes, then werewolves can basically be killed with regular bullets.
Yep. And suicide.
And potentially suicide. That's what they want them to do anyway. And
Yeah.
also the whole thing with like their corpses following them.
It
through
seems
limbo.
that the werewolf can be just killed as normal.
Yeah, it seems like it doesn't have any
It's-
sort of supernatural resistances
No.
in that.
Or maybe that's
also
only
in
when...
Ginger Snaps. Yeah,
Yeah.
Ginger Snaps agrees with that
Yeah.
anyway. That like you can't kill you can kill a werewolf basically by. I mean, the first one dies getting run over by a truck, so you know that'll do. And then this one, they just get shot.
Yeah.
You know, and that's all that happens. That's how you kill a werewolf with bullets. You could probably stab them too. I don't know.
As in Ginger Snaps.
Indeed, yes. So, yeah, there we go. I think we're voting scientifically.
Scientifically, yeah.
Scientifically, American Werewolf, once again, goes into the vault in the bunker. And the vault in our hearts.
Oh.
Where it can stay forever. I think that's all we're going to have time for this week. I think I can hear the old lycanthropes waking up there and moving around in the world. So if you want to follow us on Twitter, we are at 7 Day Apocalypse. That's at numeral 7 Day Apocalypse. Any questions, queries, comments, you can email us at filmcast@thisweeksapocalypse.com. That's filmcast@thisweeksapocalypse.com.
And remember, avoid the moors and stay on the road. Because it'll all be over soon.
Bye!